They say the cruelest punishment isn't death. It's watching someone you love walk into a trap while the whole world applauds. Clara Whitmore knew this truth the moment she heard the words through the library door. 200 pounds says I ruined the plain sister's pretty sibling before summer's end. In that breath, everything changed. Her family's survival, her sister's future, her own invisible existence, all of it balanced on the edge of a knife held by men who saw women as sport. What happens when the one person no one sees becomes the only one who can save them all? Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. The ballroom glittered like something out of a fever dream. Clara stood near the terrace doors, half hidden behind a marble column that had probably cost more than her family's entire year of income. She'd positioned herself there deliberately, close enough to observe, far enough to remain unnoticed. It was a skill she'd perfected over 26 years of being the practical daughter, the sensible one, the sister who faded into wallpaper while everyone else shimmered. Clara, for heaven's sake, stand up straight. Her mother's voice cut through the music, sharp as always. You're slouching like a governess. I am a governess, Mother, or was, until last month. Don't remind me. Margaret Whitmore's face pinched. It's bad enough that we had to pull you home. If anyone asks... I know, I came home to help with wedding preparations. Clara smoothed her hands over her dress, a pale green thing that had been altered 3 times to accommodate different occasions. The lace at the sleeves was starting to fray. No one will ask, though. No one ever asks about me. Her mother's expression flickered, something that might have been guilt on a different woman. On Margaret Whitmore, it just looked like indigestion. Your sister needs you, she said instead. Eliza needs all of us right now. This match with Lord Ashford, Clara, you understand what's at stake. Clara understood perfectly. Their father had died 18 months ago, leaving behind debts that would have been manageable if he hadn't also left behind a will that tied up the estate in ways that made bankruptcy almost certain. The house in London was already sold. The country property would follow within the year unless Eliza married well, and married quickly. Lord Geoffrey Ashford represented their last hope. He was wealthy, titled, and had spent the past 3 weeks of this extended house party paying Eliza the kind of attention that made dowagers whisper and debutantes weep. He was also, Clara suspected, a complete fraud. I understand, she said quietly. Don't worry, Mother, I won't embarrass anyone. Margaret's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. Now smile, darling. You look like you're attending a funeral. She swept away in a rustle of silk, leaving Clara alone with the column and her thoughts. The thing was, Clara wanted to believe in Lord Ashford. She wanted to believe that a man that handsome, that charming, that wealthy, could fall genuinely in love with Eliza in the space of 3 weeks. She wanted to believe in the fairy tale her mother was clinging to, like a drowning woman to driftwood. But Clara had spent 6 years as a governess in London. She'd seen enough of the real world, not the sugar-coated version presented at country house parties, to know that men like Ashford didn't pursue women like Eliza out of pure devotion. Eliza was beautiful, genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful, with golden hair and blue eyes and a laugh that sounded like music. But she was also penniless, naive, and desperately in love with the idea of being saved. Clara watched her now, dancing with Ashford in the center of the ballroom. They made a striking pair. Eliza's white dress caught the candlelight, making her look ethereal. Ashford guided her through the steps with practiced ease, his dark head bent toward hers as he murmured something that made her blush and laugh. Beautiful, isn't she? Clara startled. She hadn't heard anyone approach. The woman beside her was perhaps 40, dressed in deep purple with diamonds at her throat that were definitely real. Her face was pleasant but unremarkable, the kind of face that moved through society without making waves. My sister? Clara said carefully. Yes, she is. I meant the whole scene. The woman gestured at the ballroom with a gloved hand. The music, the dancing, the pretty lies we all tell ourselves. Beautiful and absolutely poisonous. Clara blinked. I'm sorry, have we met? Lady Catherine Pembroke. And you're Clara Whitmore, the sensible sister. Catherine's smile was knowing. Don't look so surprised. I make it my business to know who's who, especially when the who is about to make a terrible mistake. I don't. Lord Ashford is not what he seems. Catherine's voice dropped. And your sister is not the first young woman he's targeted. There was a girl last season, the daughter of a baron, pretty thing, completely besotted. He courted her for 6 weeks, made all sorts of promises, and then she trailed off, but Clara's stomach had already dropped. And then, Clara prompted, and then she was ruined. A scandal involving a midnight assignation, love letters that mysteriously appeared in all the wrong hands, and a broken engagement. The girl's family had to send her to Italy. She hasn't been back since. The music swelled. Eliza laughed at something Ashford said, her face radiant with hope. "Why are you telling me this?" Clara asked. Catherine studied her for a long moment. "Because you're the only one in your family who looks like she might actually do something about it. Your mother is too desperate. Your sister is too in love. But you—" She tilted her head. "You look angry." "I am angry." "Good. Use it." Catherine pressed something into Clara's hand, a calling card. "If you need help, send word. I've been where your sister is. I survived. I'd like to make sure she does too." Before Clara could respond, Catherine melted back into the crowd, leaving Clara standing there with a calling card and a sick feeling in her stomach. She looked back at the dance floor. Ashford was leading Eliza through a turn, and as he did, his eyes swept the room. They landed on Clara for just a second, long enough for her to see the calculation there, the cold assessment. Then he smiled and turned his attention back to Eliza, and Clara knew with absolute certainty that Catherine was right. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Clara made polite conversation when required, smiled when expected, and watched Ashford with the intensity of a hawk tracking prey. He was good. She had to give him that. The touches were perfectly calibrated, a hand at Eliza's waist during the dance, fingers brushing hers when he handed her a glass of champagne, a whispered comment that made her blush. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that would raise eyebrows, but everything designed to build intimacy. And Eliza responded like a flower turning toward the sun. "She's happy," their mother said at one point, coming to stand beside Clara. "Look at her, darling. She's happy." "Is she?" Clara asked. "Or is she desperate?" Margaret stiffened. "That's unkind. It's honest." "Honestly can be unkind." Her mother's voice carried a warning. "Clara, I know you have doubts. I know you think I'm pushing too hard. But you don't understand what it's like to be responsible for keeping this family afloat? Actually, Mother, I do. I've been doing it for 6 years while you and Eliza lived in London on the salary I sent home." The words came out harsher than Clara intended. Her mother's face went pale, then red. "We're grateful," Margaret said stiffly. "You know we're grateful." "Are you?" "Because it feels like you're willing to sacrifice Eliza to avoid being grateful to me for much longer." "That's not fair." "None of this is fair." Clara's throat tightened. "But if we're going to marry her off to save the family, can we at least make sure we're not throwing her to a wolf?" Margaret was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost pleading. "What would you have me do, Clara? We have no money, no prospects. Your father left us with nothing but debts and a name that's worth less every day. Lord Ashford is offering Eliza a life, a good life. Should I tell her no? Should I watch her end up like you, alone, working for strangers, watching life from the shadows?" The words hit like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Clara was 26, unmarried, and unemployed. She had no fortune, no beauty to recommend her, and no prospects beyond hoping her sister's marriage might secure her a place as a permanent dependent in someone else's household. "No," Clara said quietly. "I suppose you shouldn't." Her mother's hand touched her arm briefly, the closest thing to affection Margaret Whitmore usually managed. "It will work out," she said. "You'll see. Lord Ashford is a good man. Eliza will be happy. And we'll find something for you. Perhaps a cottage on the estate, or—" "I don't need anything, Mother. I never have." It was both true and completely false, but Margaret accepted it with visible relief and drifted away. Clara stayed by the column, watching and thinking. If Catherine was right, if Ashford was playing a game, then Clara needed proof. She needed to know for certain before she could act. And she needed to act carefully, because one wrong move could destroy Eliza's reputation even more thoroughly than Ashford's scheme. The ballroom was thinning now as guests drifted toward the card rooms or retired for the evening. Eliza and Ashford had separated, with Eliza joining a group of young women near the refreshment table, and Ashford moving toward a cluster of gentlemen by the French doors. Clara watched him go, then made a decision. She'd been invisible her entire life. For once, that was going to be useful. The library was in this west wing, far from the main entertainments. Clara had discovered it on the second day of the party, a quiet refuge full of old books and leather chairs that smelled like tobacco and paper. Tonight, it was occupied. Clara heard voices before she saw anyone. She paused in the doorway, instinct telling her to leave, curiosity keeping her frozen in place. 200 pounds, someone said. Male voice, young, drunk from the slur in his words. I'm telling you, Ashford, it's easy money. Easy for you to say. That was Ashford, voice smooth and amused. You're not the one who has to do the work. Please. You've been stringing the girl along for weeks. All you have to do is finish the job. Clara's hands clenched. She pressed herself against the wall just outside the door, barely breathing. The job, Ashford laughed. You make it sound so sordid, Pembridge. Isn't it? A third voice, this one older, more refined. You seduce the girl, ruin her reputation, and walk away with your pockets full. How is that not sordid? It's business, Ashford said. Nothing personal. The Whitmore girl is pretty. I'll give her that, but she's desperate. They all are. The mother, the sister, even the family solicitor. They're so eager to believe in the fairy tale that they'll hand her to me on a silver platter. And when it's done, Pembridge again, when the scandal breaks and the family is destroyed, then I collect my winnings and they deal with the consequences. Ashford's voice went hard. That's how the world works, gentlemen. The weak get eaten, the desperate get exploited, and men like us profit. Clara felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Still, the older voice said doubtfully, 200 pounds seems light for that much effort. Are you sure? The money's incidental, Ashford interrupted. It's about the game, the challenge, making them believe, then watching it all fall apart. There's a purity to it. You're a bastard, Ashford. Probably, but I'm a rich bastard, and I'll be richer soon. There was the sound of glasses clinking, laughter, and then footsteps approaching the door. Clara moved fast, ducking into an alcove just as the three men emerged. She caught a glimpse of them, Ashford in the center, flanked by two men she didn't recognize, before they disappeared down the corridor toward the card rooms. She stood there in the darkness, shaking. Catherine had been right. Ashford was playing a game, and Eliza was the prize. The goal wasn't marriage, it was ruin. And Clara's entire family was walking straight into the trap. For a long moment, she didn't move. Couldn't move. The weight of what she'd just heard pressed down on her like a physical force. Then slowly, the shock began to burn away, replaced by something sharper and infinitely more dangerous. Anger. Clara Whitmore had spent her entire life being practical, being sensible, being the one who made sacrifices so others could shine. She'd accepted her role as the invisible sister, the overlooked daughter, the woman who existed to smooth the way for everyone else. But this was different. Ashford wasn't just threatening Eliza's future. He was threatening everything. The family name, their survival, Clara's own tenuous place in the world. And he was doing it as a game, a bet, entertainment for bored aristocrats with too much money and too little conscience. Clara walked back to her room in a daze. She passed her mother in the hall. Margaret called out something about tomorrow's garden party, but Clara barely heard her. Inside her room, she locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tight. She needed proof. Concrete evidence that would convince her mother, that would make Eliza see reason, that would expose Ashford for what he was. But how? The men had mentioned a wager. That meant money changing hands, probably a written agreement. If Clara could find that agreement, she could prove what Ashford intended. But where would he keep something like that? His room, most likely. Locked away somewhere safe. The thought of breaking into a man's bedroom made Clara's stomach turn. It was dangerous. Insane. If she was caught, her reputation would be destroyed just as thoroughly as Ashford planned to destroy Eliza's. But if she did nothing? Clara closed her eyes and saw Eliza's face, radiant with hope. Saw her mother's desperate relief. Saw the future Ashford had planned. The scandal, the ruin, the slow destruction of everything her family had left. She opened her eyes. She was already invisible, already overlooked, already written off as the spinster sister with no prospects and no future. What did she have to lose that she hadn't already lost? The answer came swift and certain. Nothing. Clara stood and walked to her writing desk. She pulled out a piece of paper and began to write, her hand steady despite the fear thrumming through her veins. Lady Catherine, I need your help. If you meant what you said, please meet me in the rose garden tomorrow at dawn. C. Dougie. She sealed the note, addressed it, and set it aside to give to a maid in the morning. Then she went to her wardrobe and started planning exactly how an invisible woman was going to pull off the impossible. Awesome. Dawn came cold and gray. Clara had barely slept. She'd spent most of the night pacing her room, working through scenarios, trying to find a better solution than the insane plan taking shape in her mind. She couldn't. If she told her mother what she'd overheard, Margaret wouldn't believe her. She'd dismiss it as jealousy or paranoia or Clara trying to sabotage Eliza's chances out of spite. If she told Eliza directly, the same thing would happen. Worse, probably. Eliza was so in love with the idea of Ashford that she'd convinced herself his feelings were real. Hearing otherwise would just push her closer to him, determined to prove everyone wrong. And if Clara went to their host, the Earl of Dunhaven, with accusations against one of his guests, without proof, she'd be the one shown the door, not Ashford. No, she needed evidence. Hard, undeniable evidence, which meant she needed to get into Ashford's room. The rose garden was empty when Clara arrived, mist clinging to the ground like something out of a ghost story. She pulled her shawl tighter and waited. Catherine appeared 5 minutes later, moving through the fog like a shadow. You came, Clara said. You asked. Catherine studied her. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. Catherine glanced around, ensuring they were alone. What do you need? Clara took a breath. I overheard Ashford last night. He was in the library with 2 other men. They were talking about a wager, £200 for him to ruin Eliza. He called it a game. Catherine's expression didn't change, but her eyes went hard. I suspected as much. I need proof, something concrete enough to show my mother, to convince Eliza, but I don't know how. You need to get into his room, Catherine said. Find the wager agreement. It'll be in writing. Men like that always document their bets. Too much money involved to rely on a handshake. That's what I thought, but I can't just... if I'm caught, you'll be ruined. Catherine's voice was matter-of-fact. Utterly and completely. A woman caught in a man's bedroom at night? Your reputation won't survive it, no matter what your reasons were. Clara swallowed. I know. And you're going to do it anyway. It wasn't a question. Yes, Clara said. I am. Catherine was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then she nodded slowly. All right, then we do it right. She pulled Clara deeper into the garden, away from the house. Here's what you need to know. Ashford's room is on the 3rd floor, east wing, second door from the stairs. He usually stays up late playing cards and drinks enough that he sleeps like the dead. Your best chance is after midnight, before 3. That's when the house is quietest, and he'll be deepest asleep. How do you know all this? I told you, I make it my business to know things. Catherine's smile was grim. The door will be locked, but most of these old country house locks are simple. A hairpin will open them if you know what you're doing. I'll teach you. We have all day. The document will likely be in his desk or in a locked box. You'll need to search quickly and quietly. Get in, find it, get out. Don't linger. Don't look at anything else. Don't let curiosity slow you down. Clara nodded, her heart pounding. And Clara? Catherine's voice softened slightly. If you're caught, you run. Don't try to explain. Don't try to fix it. You run and you find me. Understand? Yes. Good. Catherine straightened. Meet me in the blue drawing room at 2 this afternoon. I'll show you how to pick the lock. And Clara? Wear gloves. Don't leave fingerprints on anything you touch. She started to walk away, then paused and looked back. You're braver than you think, she said, but bravery isn't enough. You'll need luck too, a lot of it. Then she disappeared into the mist, leaving Clara alone with her terror, and her determination. The day crawled past with agonizing slowness. Clara attended the garden party, smiled through a luncheon, and made polite conversation with people whose names she immediately forgot. All the while, her mind was racing, running through scenarios, imagining everything that could go wrong. At 2 o'clock, she slipped away to the blue drawing room. Catherine was waiting, along with a locked jewelry box and several hairpins. "The principle is simple," Catherine said, demonstrating. "You need to feel for the pins inside the lock and lift them one at a time. It takes patience and a delicate touch. Try it." Clara tried, and failed, and tried again. By the fourth attempt, sweat was beading on her forehead. "Relax," Catherine said. You're forcing it. Gentle pressure. Feel the lock. Don't fight it." Clara took a breath and tried again. This time something clicked. The box opened. "There," Catherine said. "See? You can do this. Now do it again. And again. You need to be able to open that lock in the dark, under pressure, with your hands shaking. Practice until it becomes muscle memory." They spent the next hour drilling. By the end, Clara could open the box in under 30 seconds, even with her eyes closed. "That'll do," Catherine said finally. "Remember, confidence is half the battle. If you look like you belong, people won't question you, and if anyone does see you, I run. You run." Catherine packed up the box and pins, then handed Clara 2 hairpins. "Keep these. And Clara, whatever you find in that room, don't read it there. Take it and leave. You can look at it when you're safe." Clara nodded and tucked the pins into her sleeve. That night, she forced herself to attend dinner, to sit through the endless courses and mindless chatter. Ashford was there, charming as ever, seated between Eliza and an older woman who laughed at everything he said. He caught Clara's eye once across the table. His smile was pleasant, empty. She smiled back and felt her resolve harden into something unbreakable. After dinner, there was dancing again. Clara pleaded a headache and retired early, her mother too distracted by Eliza and Ashford to pay much attention. In her room, Clara changed into her darkest dress, a navy blue that would blend into shadows. She wore gloves, as Catherine had instructed. She braided her hair tight to keep it from falling into her face. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and waited for midnight. The house settled slowly. Music from the ballroom faded. Footsteps in the corridor grew less frequent. Doors closed. Voices quieted. At midnight, Clara stood and checked her reflection in the mirror. She looked like a stranger, pale, determined, wearing darkness like armor. "Don't think," she whispered to herself. "Just move." She slipped out of her room and into the corridor. The house was a different place at night. Shadows pooled in corners. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch her pass. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a gunshot. Clara moved quickly, keeping to the edges of the hallway where the boards were less likely to groan. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone in the house could hear it. The east wing corridor stretched before her, lit only by moonlight filtering through the tall windows. "Second door from the stairs," Catherine had said. Clara counted. 1, 2. She stopped outside Ashford's room and listened. Silence. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out the hairpins. She glanced down the corridor, empty, and knelt before the lock. The pins slipped twice before she got them positioned. She could hear her own breathing, too loud, too fast. Gentle pressure. Feel the lock. Click. The door swung open. Clara slipped inside and closed it behind her, her heart in her throat. The room was dark, but not pitch black. Moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating a large bed, a wardrobe, a desk near the window. And in the bed, a shape that didn't move. Ashford. Clara froze, barely breathing, watching for any sign that he'd woken. Nothing. She crossed to the desk on silent feet and started searching. Papers, letters, an invitation to a hunt, bills from a tailor. Nothing that looked like a wager. She tried the desk drawers. The first was unlocked. More papers, a half-empty bottle of brandy, a pistol that made her heart skip. The second drawer was locked. Clara pulled out the hairpins again, her hands shaking harder now. This lock was stiffer, more resistant. Behind her, Ashford stirred. Clara froze, pins still in the lock, not daring to breathe. He muttered something in his sleep and rolled over. Silence. Clara waited 5 full seconds, then went back to the lock. This time it gave, and the drawer slid open. Inside was a leather folder. Clara lifted it out carefully, opened it. Moonlight fell across a single sheet of paper, covered in elegant handwriting. I, Lord Geoffrey Ashford, do hereby wager the sum of £200 that I shall successfully seduce and publicly ruin Miss Eliza Whitmore before the conclusion of the summer season, thereby— Clara didn't read the rest. She folded the paper, slipped it into her bodice, and closed the folder. She was turning to leave when she heard voices in the corridor, men's voices, coming closer. "Telling you Ashford keeps the best brandy. He won't mind if we—" Clara's blood turned to ice. They were coming here. To this room. She looked around wildly. The window, could she climb out? No, they were 3 floors up, the wardrobe, too obvious. Under the bed, the same. The voices were right outside the door now. Clara did the only thing she could think of. She ran to the window, threw it open, and climbed out onto the ledge. The night air hit her like a slap. The ledge was perhaps 8 inches wide, running along the outside of the building. Below, the ground was a dizzying drop into darkness. Inside, she heard the door open. "Christ, Ashford, wake up. We need your key to the wine cellar." "What?" Ashford's voice, thick with sleep. "Get out. I'm trying to sleep. Just give us the key, and we'll leave you alone." "I don't have a key to the wine cellar." "Yes, you do. Dunhaven gave you one last week." There was shuffling, grumbling. Clara pressed herself against the wall, not daring to look down, barely daring to breathe. The ledge was narrow, so narrow. One wrong move and she'd fall, and there'd be no way to explain why Clara Whitmore had been 3 floors up in the middle of the night. She'd be dead before anyone could ask. Inside the room, the argument continued. Then, suddenly, one of the men said, "Why is your window open?" Clara's heart stopped. Footsteps approached the window. She could see a shadow moving inside. If he leaned out and looked to the side, she'd be seen. Clara made a split-second decision. She started moving along the ledge, away from the window, her back pressed to the wall. Her feet shuffled sideways, inch by terrifying inch. Below, the darkness yawned. She didn't look down. "Must have left it open earlier," Ashford's voice said from inside. "It's stuffy as hell in here." "In March? You're mad." But the shadow withdrew, and Clara heard the window slam shut. She kept moving, though every instinct screamed at her to freeze, to cling to the wall and pray. The ledge seemed to stretch forever. Her dress caught on something, a loose brick, and she had to tug it free without losing her balance. Finally, blessedly, she reached another window. It was dark inside, an unoccupied room, or one where the occupant was already asleep. Clara tried the window, locked. She wanted to scream. Instead, she pulled out a hairpin. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it, and worked the window lock from the outside. It took 3 tries. The window opened. Clara climbed inside and collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, her whole body shaking. She'd done it. Against all odds, against all reason, she'd done it. The paper in her bodice crackled when she moved. Proof of Ashford's intentions, proof of the wager, proof that she'd been right. But as Clara lay there in the darkness, waiting for her heart to slow, waiting for her hands to stop shaking, she realized something. She wasn't the same person who'd climbed out onto that ledge. That woman had been invisible, overlooked, dismissed. This woman, the one who'd broken into a man's room, stolen evidence, and escaped along a 3rd-floor ledge in the dark, was something else entirely. This woman was dangerous. And for the first time in her life, Clara Whitmore smiled at that thought. Clara stayed on the floor of that empty room for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Her breathing eventually steadied. Her hands stopped shaking quite so badly. But the paper in her bodice felt like it was burning through the fabric, proof of both Ashford's villainy and her own recklessness. She needed to move. Someone could come back at any moment. The room's actual occupant could return. A servant could hear her. She stood on trembling legs and made her way to the door, listening carefully before easing it open. The corridor was empty. Clara slipped out and moved quickly back toward her own wing of the house, keeping to the shadows, her heart still racing. She passed a maid carrying linens who barely glanced at her, and a footman who was half asleep on his feet. Neither questioned why she was wandering the halls at nearly 1 in the morning. The invisible woman, invisible still. Back in her room, Clara locked the door and leaned against it. finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what she'd just done. She'd committed theft, breaking and entering. If Ashford discovered the missing document, if he connected it to her somehow, he could have her arrested, prosecuted. Her entire family destroyed not by his wager, but by her attempt to stop it. But she couldn't think about that now. Clara pulled the paper from her bodice with shaking hands and carried it to the writing desk. She lit a candle and read the full document for the first time. It was worse than she'd thought. The wager wasn't just about seduction. It detailed a specific plan. Ashford would court Eliza publicly, gain her trust completely, and then arrange a midnight meeting in the garden. He'd ensure they were discovered together in a compromising position. The scandal would be immediate and total. Eliza would be ruined, the Whitmore name destroyed, and Ashford would walk away 200 pounds richer, plus whatever amusement he'd gained from the process. The document was signed by 4 men, including Ashford, witnessed and dated. Clara read it 3 times, each pass making her angrier. These men had bet on her sister's destruction the way other people bet on horses. They documented it like a business transaction. And somewhere in this house, 3 other men were sleeping soundly, secure in the knowledge that no one would stop them because no one would believe a woman over a lord. Clara folded the paper carefully and slid it into the false bottom of her jewelry box. Then she blew out the candle and sat in the darkness, thinking. She had the proof. That was step 1. Step 2 was infinitely more complicated. She couldn't just show the document to her mother. Margaret would panic, possibly make things worse by confronting Ashford publicly, and there was no guarantee she'd even believe it. The wager was so monstrous that it would be easier to believe Clara had forged it out of jealousy than to accept that a nobleman would do such a thing. Eliza would be even worse. She'd accuse Clara of lying, of trying to sabotage her happiness, of being bitter and cruel. She might even show the document to Ashford himself, giving him a chance to explain it away or destroy the evidence. No. Clara needed a different approach. She needed to make Ashford leave, voluntarily, before he could execute his plan. But how did you make a man like that walk away from a game he was winning? Clara's mind raced through possibilities, each one more dangerous than the last. She could threaten to expose him, but he'd deny everything, and without proof that she could actually use publicly, it would be her word against his. She could try to buy him off, but with what? She had no money. The family had nothing left to sell that wasn't already spoken for. She could... A knock at her door made Clara's heart stop. She froze, staring at the door in the darkness. Another knock, softer this time. "Clara?" A whisper. "It's me. Let me in." Catherine. Clara rushed to unlock the door. Catherine slipped inside, still fully dressed despite the late hour. "I saw you come back," she said without preamble. "Did you get it?" Clara nodded and retrieved the paper from the jewelry box. Catherine read it by moonlight, her expression growing harder with each line. "Bastards," she said finally. "All of them. I recognize 2 of these signatures, Lord Pembridge and Sir Harold Vance. Pembridge is a gambling addict who'd bet on anything. Vance is worse. He's the one who helped arrange the last girl's ruin. They make it a sport." "How do we stop them?" Catherine looked at her. "We don't. You do. This is your sister, your family. I can help, but the final move has to be yours." "Then tell me what to do." Clara heard the desperation in her own voice. "I have the proof, but I can't use it. If I show it to anyone, they'll ask how I got it. The moment I admit to breaking into his room, I'm ruined just as thoroughly as Eliza would be. So don't tell anyone how you got it. They'll ask. Let them ask." Catherine's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "You're not the one on trial here, Clara. He is. Or he will be, if you're clever about it." "I don't understand." Catherine moved to the window, looking out at the grounds below. "Ashford's weakness is his arrogance. He thinks he's untouchable. He thinks women are too stupid and too desperate to fight back. We use that against him." "How?" "You confront him, privately. You show him the paper, tell him you know what he's planning, and give him a choice. Leave immediately and never contact your sister again, or you take this to the Earl of Dunhaven and let the scandal destroy everyone involved, including him." Clara's stomach turned. "He'll deny it. He'll say I forged it." "Probably. But here's the thing. He can't actually prove you forged it without admitting the wager exists in the first place. And even if people don't believe you stole the real document, the accusation alone will be enough to make other fathers keep their daughters away from him. His game ends either way. But what about me? My reputation will be damaged, yes. People will whisper about the strange sister who made wild accusations. But Clara, your reputation is already damaged. You're 26 and unmarried. You are a governess. You have no prospects. What you do have is the ability to save your sister and your family's name. That's worth more than your reputation, isn't it? The words stung because they were true. Clara had nothing to lose because she'd never had anything to begin with. When? She asked quietly. Tomorrow. Early, before the rest of the house is awake. I'll arrange a meeting with him. Tell him you have information about Eliza that he needs to hear privately. He'll come because he'll think you're offering to help him, maybe even asking for money to stay quiet. Men like him always assume everyone else is as corrupt as they are. Where? The conservatory. It's isolated, and there's only one entrance. If he tries anything, you can scream and bring the whole house running. Catherine paused. And Clara? Bring the paper, but don't let him take it from you. He'll try. Don't let him. Clara nodded, her throat tight. Catherine touched her shoulder briefly. You're doing the right thing. It doesn't feel like it now, but you are. Then she was gone, leaving Clara alone with her fear and her evidence and the terrible knowledge that tomorrow everything would change. Clara didn't sleep. She sat by the window and watched the sky slowly lighten from black to gray to pale gold. Somewhere in the house, servants were waking. The kitchen would be preparing breakfast. The stable boys would be feeding horses. Normal morning routines while Clara prepared to destroy a man's scheme and possibly her own future in the process. At 6 o'clock, a maid knocked softly and handed Clara a note. Conservatory, 7 o'clock. I've sent word to Ashford that you need to speak with him urgently. He'll be there. Stay strong. See. Clara dressed carefully, choosing a gray dress that was practical and severe. She pinned her hair up tight. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she become someone capable of this? The conservatory was at the far end of the east wing, a glass-walled room full of exotic plants and humid air. Clara arrived 10 minutes early and positioned herself near the back, partially hidden by a large fern. Ashford arrived exactly on time. He looked perfect, of course, impeccably dressed, hair-styled, expression pleasantly curious. He glanced around the conservatory and smiled when he spotted Clara. Miss Whitmore, this is unexpected. He moved toward her with easy confidence. I received a rather cryptic message saying you needed to speak with me urgently. I confess, I'm intrigued. Clara's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. Thank you for coming, Lord Ashford. Of course. Though I must say, meeting alone like this is rather improper. His smile widened slightly. Not that I'm complaining. I've been hoping for a chance to speak with you privately. Have you? Certainly. You're Eliza's sister, after all, her protector. I imagine you have questions about my intentions. He was so smooth, so practiced. Clara could see exactly how he'd charmed Eliza, how he'd convinced her mother that his interest was genuine. I do have questions, Clara said. But first, I have something to show you. She pulled the folded paper from her sleeve and held it up. Ashford's smile didn't falter, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation. What's that? He asked lightly. You know what it is. I'm afraid I don't. Clara unfolded the paper and read aloud. I, Lord Geoffrey Ashford, do hereby wager the sum of £200 that I shall successfully seduce and publicly ruin Miss Eliza Whitmore before the conclusion of the summer season. Stop! His voice was sharp now, the charm gone. Where did you get that? Does it matter? It matters very much, Miss Whitmore. That's a private document. If you stole it, if I stole it, Clara's laugh was bitter. You're concerned about theft? You're planning to destroy my sister's life for entertainment and £200, but you're worried about a piece of paper. Ashford's expression hardened. He stepped closer and Clara instinctively moved back. You have no idea what you're doing, he said quietly. Give me that paper. No. Miss Whitmore. Clara. Be reasonable. You're upset. I understand, but you're misinterpreting what you've read. That document it's a joke. A foolish bet made while drunk. It doesn't mean anything. It's signed by 4 men and witnessed. It's dated. It includes specific details about how you plan to ruin her. That's not a joke. It's not real either. He tried the smile again, softer this time. Please, think about what you're doing. If you make accusations based on that paper, you'll destroy your sister's chances. Everyone will know about the wager, real or not. Her reputation will be finished. Is that what you want? Clara's hands tightened on the paper. She'd known he'd try this, but hearing it still made her angry. What I want, she said carefully, is for you to leave. Today. Pack your things, make your excuses to the Earl, and disappear from our lives. Forever. Ashford stared at her. Then he laughed. A genuine laugh, like she'd told an excellent joke. You're serious. You actually think you can threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you a choice. Really? And what's my alternative? You go to your mother with this? She won't believe you. She's too desperate for this match. Or perhaps you'll go to Eliza? She's in love with me, Clara. She'll think you forged this out of jealousy. I'll go to the Earl of Dunhaven. That made him pause. Dunhaven will listen when I tell him that 4 of his guests made a wager to destroy a young woman's reputation under his roof. He'll listen when I present him with written proof. And even if he doesn't believe the document is real, even if he thinks I'm lying, he'll still have to ask you to leave. Because the accusation alone is damaging enough that he can't ignore it. Ashford's jaw tightened. You'd ruin yourself to stop me. That's insane. Maybe, but I'll do it anyway. They stood there in the humid air of the conservatory, surrounded by orchids and ferns, locked in a battle of wills. Claire could see him thinking, calculating odds and outcomes, could see the moment he realized she meant every word. Fine, he said finally. I'll leave. But Clara, you've made a very dangerous enemy today. I can live with that. Can you? He moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because here's what's going to happen. I'm going to leave, just like you asked, and I'm going to tell everyone that I discovered Eliza isn't the innocent girl she pretends to be. That she threw herself at me, and when I refused her, her bitter sister tried to blackmail me with a forged document. By the time I'm done, your family's reputation will be in tatters anyway, and you'll have nothing to show for it. Clara's blood ran cold. She hadn't considered that, hadn't thought past getting him to leave. You can't. I can, and I will. Unless, he paused, studying her face. Unless we come to a different arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I leave quietly, tell everyone I was called away on urgent family business. No accusations against Eliza, no stories about blackmail. But in exchange, you give me that document and you never speak of this to anyone. Not your mother, not your sister, not Catherine Pembroke. You bury this completely, and so do I. Clara's mind raced. If she agreed, Eliza would be safe from the wager, but Ashford would walk away unpunished, free to try this again with some other desperate family. If she refused, he'd destroy them all anyway, just out of spite. How do I know you'll keep your word? She asked. Ashford smiled coldly. You don't, but it's the best offer you're going to get. Take it or leave it, Miss Whitmore, but decide quickly. My patience is running out. Clara looked at the paper in her hands. All that risk, all that fear, and it came down to this. Trust a villain's word or watch him destroy them anyway. She was opening her mouth to respond when a voice spoke from the doorway. I wouldn't trust him if I were you. Both Clara and Ashford spun around. A man stood in the entrance to the conservatory. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that were cold as winter. He was dressed for riding, but there was something about the way he held himself that suggested danger. Clara had seen him at the house party, but never spoken to him, had heard the other guests whisper his name with a mixture of respect and fear. Duke Adrian Hale. This is a private conversation, Ashford said sharply. Is it? Adrian's gaze swept over them both, taking in Clara's defensive posture, the paper in her hands, Ashford's anger. It looked more like an extortion attempt to me. Stay out of this, Hale. It doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? Adrian moved into the conservatory with the careful grace of a predator. I was out riding early and happened to pass by. The conservatory has excellent acoustics. Did you know that? Sound carries remarkably well through the glass, especially when people are arguing. Claire's heart sank. He'd heard everything. How much did you hear? Ashford demanded. Enough. Adrian's voice was mild, but his eyes were hard. Enough to know that you're in breach of basic decency, Ashford, and enough to know that Miss Whitmore here is trying to protect her sister from your particular brand of entertainment. You can't prove anything. Can't I? Adrian looked at Clara. May I see that document, Miss Whitmore? Clara hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust anyone, especially not a duke with a reputation for coldness. But Ashford was backing toward the door, clearly planning to run, and if he left now, she'd never stop him. She handed Adrian the paper. He read it quickly, his expression never changing. Then he folded it carefully and tucked it into his coat pocket. Wait, Clara started. Don't worry. I'm not keeping it. I'm protecting it. Adrian turned to Ashford. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this house party today, just as Miss Whitmore requested. You're going to tell the Earl you've been called away on urgent business, and you're going to disappear from this family's life permanently. If you don't, if you make any accusations against the Whitmores, if you spread any rumors, if you so much as mention Eliza's name in public, I will take this document to every club, every drawing room, every social gathering in London. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. You wouldn't dare. It would create a scandal that would touch everyone involved, including you. I don't care about scandal, Adrian said simply. I'm a duke. I'm wealthy. I'm also known for being cruel and heartless, so no one will be particularly surprised if I decide to destroy you for sport. The question is, can you afford that same scandal? Can Pembridge? Can Vance? Or will your fellow gamblers turn on you the moment their own reputations are at stake? Ashford's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Adrian's smile was sharp as a blade. Try me, please. I've been bored lately. Ruining you might be entertaining. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Ashford straightened, his charm sliding back into place like a mask. Fine. I'll leave. But this isn't over, Hale. Yes, it is. Ashford looked at Clara, and the hatred in his eyes made her flinch. You should have taken my offer, he said quietly. You would have at least kept some dignity. Now you'll always be the desperate spinster who needed a duke to save her. He walked out without looking back. Clara stood there, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. Adrian was still holding the paper. He pulled it from his pocket and handed it back to her. You should burn this, he said. The evidence is useful now, but it's also dangerous. If it ever became public, the scandal would touch your family as much as Ashford's. I know. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you. I don't know what you heard or why you helped, but thank you. Don't thank me yet. Adrian studied her with those cold eyes. You do realize what you've just done, don't you? Ashford will leave, but he won't forgive. Men like him never do. And while I can protect you from scandal, I can't protect you from every petty revenge he might dream up. I'll deal with that when it comes. Will you? He tilted his head slightly. You're brave, Miss Whitmore. Foolishly brave, perhaps, but brave nonetheless. Not many people would have done what you did. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You chose risk over safety. That's rare. He paused. May I ask you something? Clara nodded, still trying to understand why a duke would care. Why didn't you go to your mother first, or to Dunhaven? Why handle this yourself? Because no one would have believed me. They would have thought I was jealous or lying or trying to sabotage my sister's happiness. The only way to stop him was to do it myself, even if it meant... She stopped, unable to finish. Even if it meant destroying yourself in the process. Yes? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, a real smile, not the cold mask he'd worn before. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Not particularly. Both qualities are useful in their own way. He moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice, Miss Whitmore. Ashford is leaving, but his friends aren't. Pembridge and Vance are still here. They'll figure out what happened eventually, and they won't be happy about losing their entertainment. Watch yourself. I will. And if you need help, Actual help, not just someone to threaten people on your behalf. Send word to Thornfield House. That's my estate, about 20 miles north of here. I'm returning there tomorrow. Clara blinked. Why would you help me? Adrian's expression was unreadable. Because you risked everything for someone you love. Because you didn't ask for a reward or expect gratitude. Because you were willing to be invisible your whole life but stepped into the light the moment it mattered. He paused. Those are rare qualities. I'd hate to see them wasted. Then he was gone, leaving Clara alone in the conservatory with her racing heart and her stolen evidence and 1,000 questions she couldn't answer. She stood there for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She'd succeeded. Ashford was leaving. Eliza would be safe. But the cost was higher than she'd anticipated. Ashford's parting words echoed in her mind. The desperate spinster who needed a duke to save her. Was that what she'd become? Clara looked down at the paper in her hands. The wager, signed and witnessed. Proof of evil that she could never use publicly without destroying herself. Adrian was right. She should burn it. But something stopped her. This paper represented everything Clara had fought against her entire life. The casual cruelty of men who saw women as objects, the systems that protected them, the silence that allowed them to keep playing their games. Burning it felt like giving up, like accepting that some battles couldn't be won, only survived. Clara folded the paper carefully and slipped it back into her sleeve. She wasn't ready to give up yet. The walk back to her room felt longer than before. Clara kept expecting someone to stop her, to demand explanations, but the house was still mostly asleep. The few servants she passed didn't look at her twice. Invisible again. In her room, Clara locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed, letting the enormity of the morning finally hit her. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. But she'd also exposed herself to a duke's scrutiny, made an enemy of a vengeful lord, and tied herself to a debt she could never repay. A knock at the door made her jump. "Clara?" Her mother's voice, sharp with concern. "Are you in there? Open this door immediately." Clara's stomach dropped. How did her mother already know? She opened the door to find Margaret Whitmore standing there with a face like thunder. "What?" Margaret said in a voice that could freeze water. "Have you done?" "I don't know what you did." "Don't lie to me." Her mother pushed into the room and closed the door behind her. "Lord Ashford just informed the Earl that he's leaving immediately due to a family emergency. He was quite apologetic about it. But then Lady Catherine cornered me at breakfast and told me you'd been seen in the conservatory with him this morning, alone, at 7 o'clock. So I'll ask you again, what have you done?" Clara's mind raced. How much could she tell? How much should she? "I stopped him," she said finally. "Ashford was playing a game, Mother. He never intended to marry Eliza. He was going to ruin her for a wager." Margaret's face went white. "That's impossible. He's a lord. He's wealthy. Why would he?" "Because men like him do it for sport." Clara pulled out the paper and handed it to her mother. "Read it." Margaret read. Clara watched the color drain completely from her face. "Where did you get this?" Her mother's voice shook. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's real, and I stopped him. Ashford is leaving. Eliza is safe." "Safe? Safe?" Margaret's voice rose. "Clara, do you have any idea what you've done? If anyone finds out you broke into a man's room—" "I didn't say I broke into his room." "You didn't have to. How else would you have gotten this?" Her mother crumpled the paper in her fist. "You've ruined us. Not Ashford. You. The moment people find out, they won't find out. Duke Hale has ensured that." That stopped Margaret mid-rant. "Duke Hale? Adrian Hale? What does he have to do with this?" He overheard the confrontation in the conservatory. He threatened to expose Ashford publicly if he didn't leave quietly. So Ashford left. "It's over, Mother. Eliza is safe, and our reputation is intact." "Our reputation is not intact. You involved a duke in a scandal involving our family. You made us look weak and desperate, and Eliza—" Margaret's voice broke. "Eliza was in love with him. She thought she was going to be married. How am I supposed to explain this to her?" "Tell her the truth." "I can't tell her the truth. It will destroy her." Clara felt something inside her snap. "Then lie to her," she said coldly. "Tell her Ashford had to leave for family reasons. Tell her he was called away suddenly. Tell her anything you want. but don't you dare make me the villain here. I saved her mother. I risked everything to save her because no one else would. You risked everything for nothing. Without Ashford, we're right back where we started, broke, desperate, and running out of options. At least we're not ruined. Not yet. But when word gets out about your midnight adventures, word won't get out. Duke Hale won't talk. Ashford won't talk, and I certainly won't talk. The only person who might is you. Margaret stared at her like she was looking at a stranger. When did you become so hard? She asked quietly. Clara laughed, a broken, bitter sound. I've always been hard, Mother. I had to be. Someone in this family needed to be practical. Someone needed to make the difficult choices. That's always been me. The only difference is that now you know about it. Her mother was silent for a long moment. Then she smoothed her skirts and lifted her chin. Very well. I won't speak of this to anyone. But Clara, you're on your own now. Whatever consequences come from your actions, you'll face them alone. I can't protect you anymore. You never protected me in the first place. Margaret flinched like she'd been slapped. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Clara alone with her victory and her anger and the terrible knowledge that she'd just burned her last bridge. She sat back down on the bed and stared at the wall. She'd saved Eliza. She'd stopped Ashford. She'd even gained the help of a duke. So why did it feel like she'd lost everything that mattered? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Clara almost didn't answer, but something made her get up and open the door. Catherine stood there, her expression sympathetic. I heard about your mother, she said quietly. May I come in? Clara nodded and stepped aside. Catherine closed the door and turned to face her. You did the right thing, she said firmly. I know it doesn't feel like it. I know your mother is angry and your sister will be heartbroken and you feel like you're alone. But Clara, you saved her. That matters. Does it? Because right now it feels like I traded Eliza's future for my own and got nothing in return. You got your sister's safety. You got proof that you're stronger than anyone gave you credit for. And you got Duke Hale's attention, which is either a blessing or a curse depending on how you look at it. Clara managed a weak smile. Which is it? I honestly don't know. Hale is complicated. He's brilliant and ruthless and has been completely withdrawn from society for years after his wife died. The fact that he helped you at all is remarkable. The fact that he offered further assistance is extraordinary. Why would he do that? Catherine sat down on the bed and gestured for Clara to join her. Because you reminded him that bravery still exists, she said simply. Because you did something he respects. Or maybe because he's lonely and saw someone else who understands what it's like to stand alone. I don't know. But Clara, don't dismiss it. If Duke Hale is offering help, take it. He's not the kind of man who makes those offers lightly. I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's recognition. Catherine stood. I have to go. The Earl is asking questions about Ashford's sudden departure, and I need to help manage the gossip. But Clara, you're not alone, not completely. Remember that. She left, and Clara was alone again. She walked to the window and looked out at the grounds. Somewhere out there, Ashford was packing his things, planning his revenge. Somewhere, Eliza was about to have her heart broken by news of her suitor's departure. Somewhere, her mother was telling people lies to protect their family's reputation. And Clara? Clara was standing in a room she'd be leaving soon, holding evidence of a crime she could never report, tied to a duke she didn't understand, and facing a future more uncertain than ever. But she was standing. That had to count for something. But she was standing. That had to count for something. The thought sustained Clara for exactly 3 hours. Then reality reasserted itself with the force of a hammer blow. Eliza found out. Clara was in the morning room pretending to read a book while actually staring at the same page for 20 minutes when her sister burst through the door. Eliza's face was blotchy, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. You did this! Her voice shook. Mother told me everything. You drove him away. Clara set down the book carefully. Eliza, I can explain. Explain what? That you were so jealous of my happiness you had to destroy it? That you couldn't stand watching me have what you'll never have? That's not what happened. Then what? Eliza's voice rose to a near shriek. Tell me, Clara. Tell me why the man I love suddenly had to leave. Tell me why Mother won't look me in the eye. Tell me why everyone's whispering about our family again. Clara stood, keeping her voice low and steady, even though her heart was racing. Because Jeffrey Ashford never loved you. He was using you. There was a wager. I don't believe you. Eliza, please, listen to me. I have proof. I don't care about your proof. Eliza's hands clenched into fists. You're lying. You've always been lying. You hate me because I'm prettier, because men actually look at me, because I have a chance at something you'll never. The slap came before Clara realized she'd moved. Her palm connected with Eliza's cheek with a sharp crack that echoed in the quiet room. They both froze. Clara stared at her own hand like it belonged to someone else. She'd never struck anyone in her life, never even raised her voice in anger. Eliza touched her reddening cheek, eyes wide with shock. You hit me, she whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, you hit me. Eliza's voice went cold. You really are a monster, aren't you? Mother was right. You've always been jealous, always bitter, and now you've shown what you really are. She turned and walked out, leaving Clara standing there with her hands still raised, shame and fury warring in her chest. The door opened again. Clara whirled, expecting Eliza, but it was Catherine. I heard shouting, Catherine said quietly. Half the house heard shouting. I hit her, Clara's voice was hollow. My own sister, I hit her. She'll survive, though your reputation might not. Catherine moved closer, lowering her voice. Clara, you need to leave, today. The whispers are already starting. People are asking why Ashford left so suddenly. Someone saw you in the conservatory with Duke Hale. Your mother is barely holding the story together, and your sister is going to make everything worse if she keeps talking. Leave? Where would I go? Anywhere but here. Go home. Go to London. Go to... Catherine paused. Actually, I have a better idea. Go to Thornfield House. Clara stared at her. Duke Hale's estate? I can't just show up uninvited. You're not uninvited. He told you to send word if you needed help. Well, you need help. And more importantly, you need to disappear before the situation explodes completely. I can't run away. You're not running away. You're making a strategic retreat. Catherine pulled a calling card from her pocket and pressed it into Clara's hand. This is my address in London. If you need anything, money, references, a place to stay, write to me. But Clara, don't stay here. Not now. Give your family time to calm down. Give the gossip time to die. Come back when things have settled. When will that be? Catherine's expression was sympathetic. I don't know. Maybe never. But staying here now? That's guaranteed disaster. Clara packed in a daze. She threw dresses and books into a trunk with no real plan beyond getting out before she caused more damage. Her hands were still shaking from the confrontation with Eliza. She'd hit her own sister. The shame of it sat like lead in her stomach. A maid brought her a note from her mother. Clara opened it with trembling fingers. Clara, I think it's best if you leave for a while. I've arranged for a carriage to take you to wherever you wish to go. Your sister needs time. We all do. I hope you understand. Mother. No signature. No love. Just a cold dismissal wrapped in politeness. Clara crumpled the note and threw it in the fireplace. Fine. If they wanted her gone, she'd go. But where? She looked at Duke Hale's card still sitting on her writing desk. Thornfield House, 20 miles north. It was insane. She barely knew the man. He'd helped her once out of, what, pity? Boredom? Some twisted sense of obligation? But Catherine was right. She had nowhere else to go. No money, no friends beyond Catherine herself, and no prospects. Going home meant returning to an empty house with creditors circling. Staying here meant watching her family fall apart while everyone blamed her. At least at Thornfield, she'd be away from the whispers. Clara pulled out a piece of paper and wrote quickly before she could change her mind. Duke Hale, you said to send word if I needed help. I need help. I'm coming to Thornfield House. If this is an imposition, please send word immediately and I'll make other arrangements. Clara Whitmore. She sealed it and gave it to a footman with instructions to deliver it immediately. Then she finished packing and waited. The reply came an hour later. A single line in bold handwriting. Come. Clara stared at the word for a long moment. Then she went downstairs and climbed into the waiting carriage without looking back. Thornfield House sat at the end of a long drive lined with bare trees. It was massive, gray stone and sharp angles, more fortress than home. The windows were dark despite the late afternoon sun. The carriage stopped at the front entrance. Clara climbed out, suddenly very aware of how foolish this was. She was about to turn around and tell the driver to take her anywhere else when the front door opened. A butler appeared, elderly, impeccably dressed, with an expression that gave away nothing. "Miss Whitmore?" "Yes." "His Grace is expecting you. Please come in." Clara followed him into a cavernous entrance hall. The walls were lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The floor was marble, cold and echoing. "Wait here, please." The butler disappeared up a staircase, leaving Clara alone with the ancestors and her rapidly escalating panic. What was she doing here? She didn't know this man, didn't know what he wanted or why he'd helped her. For all she knew, Duke Hale was just as dangerous as Ashford, just better at hiding it. Footsteps on the stairs made her turn. Adrian Hale descended like a king surveying his domain. He was dressed less formally than he'd been at the house party. No jacket, sleeves rolled to his elbows, collar open. It should have made him look casual. Instead, it made him look dangerous. "Miss Whitmore." He stopped at the bottom of the stairs. "I wasn't expecting you quite this quickly. I'm sorry, I should have waited for a proper invitation. I can leave." "Don't be ridiculous. You're here now." He studied her with those cold eyes. "You look terrible." Clara almost laughed. "Thank you. That's very reassuring." "I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm being honest. You look like you haven't slept. You've been crying, and something else happened after I left. What?" "I hit my sister." That got a reaction. Adrian's eyebrows rose slightly. "Did she deserve it?" What?" "It's a simple question. Did she deserve it?" Clara thought about Eliza's accusations, the cruelty in her voice, the absolute certainty that Clara had destroyed her happiness out of jealousy. "Yes," she said quietly. "She did." "Then stop feeling guilty about it." Adrian gestured toward a doorway. "Come. We'll talk in the library. You look like you could use a drink." The library was warmer than the rest of the house. Literally. A fire burned in the enormous fireplace, and the walls were lined with books that actually looked red rather than decorative. Adrian poured 2 glasses of brandy and handed one to Clara. "Drink." "It's 3 in the afternoon." "I'm aware. Drink anyway." Clara drank. The brandy burned going down, but it steadied her nerves. Adrian sat in a chair across from her, his own glass cradled loosely in one hand. "Tell me what happened after I left." So Clara told him. About Eliza's confrontation, about her mother's coldness, about the note telling her to leave. She left out the slap initially, but Adrian's expression told her he knew she was holding something back. "And then?" he prompted. "And then I hit her, Eliza. She kept saying I was jealous, that I'd destroyed her happiness because I couldn't stand to see her loved. And I lost control." "Good." Clara blinked. "Good?" "You're allowed to be angry, Clara. You saved her life and she accused you of jealousy. You risked everything and your family threw you out. You're allowed to hit someone who deserved it." "That's not how the world works. It's how my world works." Adrian took a sip of his brandy. "Tell me, what are you planning to do now?" "I don't know. Find work, I suppose. There's a teaching position in Yorkshire I could apply for, or I could go to London, try to find another governess post. And spend the rest of your life raising other people's children while your own family pretends you don't exist?" The bluntness of it stung. "What else would you suggest?" Clara asked, hearing the bitterness in her own voice. "Stay here." She stared at him. "What?" "Stay at Thornfield. I have a proposition for you." Clara's stomach clenched. She'd heard about propositions from powerful men before. They never ended well for women with no money and nowhere to go. Adrian must have seen something in her expression because he laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Not that kind of proposition. I'm not Ashford." He set down his glass. "I need help. My estate is falling apart. The steward I hired 3 months ago quit last week because I'm impossible to work with. The house is being run by a butler who's 70 years old and a housekeeper who hates me. The tenants are owed repairs I can't organize because I don't trust anyone to do them properly. And I have a sister. He said the last word like it physically pained him. You have a sister? Had. Have. It's complicated. Adrian stood and moved to the window. She lives here. She's 16. She's also been sick for the past year, and every doctor I've brought in tells me there's nothing wrong with her. But she barely eats, barely speaks, and won't leave her room most days. I need someone who might... He stopped, and Clara saw something in his rigid shoulders that looked like helplessness. You need someone who can reach her, Clara said quietly. Yes. Why me? Adrian turned to face her. Because you understand what it's like to be invisible. You understand what it's like to watch everyone else live while you're stuck in the shadows. You understand what it's like to be desperate and angry, and to have no one believe you when you try to tell them what's wrong. The accuracy of it took Clara's breath away. You want me to be her companion? I want you to be whatever she needs. Companion, friend, sister, I don't care. I just need her to start living again before it's too late. And in exchange, room, board, a salary that's triple what you'd make as a governess, and my protection from whatever consequences Ashford decides to rain down on you. Plus, he paused, plus a chance to prove you're more than what your family thinks you are. Clara's throat tightened. You don't know me well enough to offer this. Don't I? I know you broke into a man's room to save your sister. I know you confronted him alone with nothing but a piece of paper and your own courage. I know you're intelligent, brave, and capable of making impossible decisions. That's more than enough. What if I fail? What if I can't help your sister? Then you fail. But at least you'll have tried. Adrian's eyes were steady on hers. What do you say, Clara Whitmore? Will you stay? She should say no. Should recognize this for what it was. A devil's bargain with a man she didn't know, in a house that felt like a tomb, trying to save a girl she'd never met. But the alternative was worse. The alternative was going back to being invisible, powerless, overlooked. I'll stay, Clara heard herself say. For now. Good enough. Adrian moved toward the door. I'll have Mrs. Hartley show you to your room. We'll discuss the details tomorrow. For now, rest. You look like death. You have a gift for flattery. I have a gift for honesty. Most people just can't handle it. He left, and Clara was alone again. She finished her brandy in one burning swallow and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Mrs. Hartley turned out to be a gray-haired woman with a face like carved granite and a voice that could freeze blood. This way, Miss Whitmore. She led Clara up 3 flights of stairs to a room in the east wing. It was surprisingly comfortable, larger than her room at home, with a proper fireplace and windows that overlooked the grounds. Dinner is at 7, Mrs. Hartley said. His Grace prefers punctuality. Of course. And his sister? When will I meet her? Mrs. Hartley's expression hardened even further, which Clara hadn't thought possible. Miss Lily doesn't receive visitors. I'm not a visitor. I'm here to help her. Help her? Mrs. Hartley's laugh was bitter. Everyone who comes here wants to help her. The doctors, the specialists, the concerned relatives. They all want to help, and they all make her worse. I'm not a doctor. No, you're a desperate woman with nowhere else to go, accepting charity from a man who doesn't know what he's asking for. Mrs. Hartley moved towards the door. Dinner at 7, Miss Whitmore. Don't be late. She left before Clara could respond. Clara unpacked slowly, thinking about Mrs. Hartley's words. A desperate woman with nowhere else to go. Was that what she'd become? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. A maid entered, young and nervous. Begging your pardon, miss, but there's a gentleman downstairs asking for you. Says it's urgent. Clara's heart dropped. What gentleman? Wouldn't give his name, miss, but he's dressed fine. Quality. Says he needs to speak with you privately. Ashford. It had to be. He'd followed her here, probably to make good on his threats. Tell him I'm not receiving visitors. I tried, miss. He said he'd wait. His Grace is dealing with him now, but a crash from downstairs cut her off, then raised voices. Clara ran for the stairs. The entrance hall was chaos. Adrian stood near the door, face dark with fury. Across from him was not Ashford, but one of the men from the library, Lord Pembridge, drunk and swaying. Where is she? Pembridge shouted. Where's the little bitch who ruined everything? Get out of my house, Adrian said, voice deadly quiet. Not until she gives back what she stole. That document belongs to us. It's our property, and she's a thief. The document proves you and your friends tried to destroy an innocent woman. I'd say that makes you the criminals, not her. You don't understand. Ashford is bankrupt. He needed that wager. The money was supposed to cover his debts. Without it, he's ruined, and so are we. We all put up stakes. Clara, frozen on the stairs, felt the world tilt. Ashford hadn't just been cruel. He'd been desperate. And now other men with money and power, were involved. That's not Miss Whitmore's problem, Adrian said. It is when we decide to make it her problem. Pembridge's eyes were wild. You think hiding her here will protect her? We know people, Hale. We have connections. One word from us and her family will be completely destroyed, not just socially, financially, legally. We'll make sure the Whitmores lose everything. You're threatening me in my own house? I'm telling you facts. Pembridge straightened, trying for dignity and failing. Give us the document, hand over the girl, and we'll forget this ever happened. Otherwise what? Clara's voice rang out. Both men looked up. She descended the stairs slowly, forcing herself not to shake. Miss Whitmore, go back to your room, Adrian ordered. No. Clara reached the bottom step and faced Pembridge. You want the document? Fine, I'll give it to you. Clara, on one condition, she continued, ignoring Adrian. You leave my family alone completely. No threats, no legal action, no financial manipulation. They're innocent in all this. Pembridge's smile was ugly. And what guarantee do we have that you won't make copies? That you won't use this against us later? You have my word. The word of a thief and a liar? Forgive me if that's not particularly reassuring. Then what do you want? Pembridge moved closer, and Clara smelled the alcohol on his breath. I want you to disappear, permanently. Leave England. Go to the continent. Go to America. I don't care. But you vanish and you take any knowledge of the wager with you. Do that, and your family stays safe. Absolutely not, Adrian said. But Clara was already calculating. If she left, if she gave them the document and disappeared, her family would be safe. Eliza could find another match. Her mother could hold her head up in society. The Whitmore name would survive, and Clara would be free. Free of expectations, free of being invisible, free of watching her family prosper while she faded into nothing. I'll do it, she said. Clara, don't be insane. I'll do it, she repeated, louder. Give me 3 days to arrange passage and get the document. Then I'll leave, and this will all be over. Pembridge studied her suspiciously. How do I know you won't run the moment I leave? Because I'm giving you my word, and unlike you and your friends, my word actually means something. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Pembridge nodded slowly. 3 days. If you're not on a ship by then, the deal's off and your family suffers. He stumbled toward the door. Adrian moved to block him. Touch her again, and I'll kill you, Adrian said quietly. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Pembridge paled but tried to maintain his sneer. 3 days, Hale. After that, she's fair game. He left, and the door slammed behind him. Adrian rounded on Clara immediately. What the hell was that? That was me solving a problem. By agreeing to exile? By letting those bastards win? By protecting my family? Clara's voice rose. Don't you understand? If I stay, they'll destroy everyone I care about. If I leave, everyone survives. It's simple mathematics. It's surrender. It's survival. Clara moved toward the stairs, suddenly exhausted. You of all people should understand that. You live in this tomb of a house, hiding from the world, protecting your sister from everything, including life itself. Don't lecture me about surrender when you're the king of it. She saw the hit land, saw Adrian's face go cold and closed. Go to your room, he said quietly. Gladly. Clara climbed the stairs, her heart pounding, adrenaline making her hands shake. In her room, she locked the door and sat on the bed. 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out how to leave England, where to go, how to survive in a foreign country with no money and no connections. 3 days to say goodbye to everything she'd ever known. Clara pulled out the wager document from where she'd hidden it in her trunk. She stared at the signatures, the casual cruelty of the words. This piece of paper had destroyed her life, and now it was going to save her family. She was about to put it away when her door rattled. "Clara!" Adrian's voice sharp with urgency. "Open the door. Go away. Open it. Now." Something in his tone made her move. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. Adrian stood there with a man Clara didn't recognize, younger, dressed as a servant but with eyes too sharp for his role. "This is James," Adrian said. "He works for me, gathering information. James, tell her what you just told me." James looked uncomfortable. "I did some asking around about Lord Pembridge. Your Grace asked me to. Turns out he's worse than broke. He's into the moneylenders for thousands. Same with Sir Harold Vance and Ashford." James paused. "Ashford's being called in by his creditors tomorrow. If he can't pay, he'll be arrested." Clara's stomach dropped. "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything," Adrian said grimly. "They're not just trying to protect themselves from scandal. They're trying to blackmail you into paying them off. The exile isn't about making you disappear. It's about making you vulnerable. Once you're on a ship with no witnesses, they'll force you to give them money. Money they think your family has. Money they think you'll pay to keep them quiet. But we don't have money. We're broke. They don't know that. And even if they did, they'd probably just kill you anyway to eliminate the evidence." The room spun. "You're saying if you go, you die. They'll make sure of it, and your family will have no idea what happened to you until it's too late." Clara sat down heavily on the bed. "So I can't stay and I can't leave. What am I supposed to do?" Adrian crouched in front of her, his eyes intense. "You fight. We fight. Together." "How?" "They have money, power, connections. And we have something they don't. We have the truth. We have evidence, and we have me." His smile was sharp and dangerous. "I told you I was bored, Clara. I lied. I'm not bored anymore. I'm furious. And when I'm furious, I'm very good at destroying people." "Why would you risk yourself for me?" "Because you risked yourself for your sister. Because you stood up to Ashford when no one else would. Because—" He stopped, something flickering across his face. "Because I'm tired of watching good people get crushed by bastards who think they can do whatever they want. So what do you say? Will you trust me?" Clara looked at him. This duke with his cold eyes and his broken family and his fortress of a house. She barely knew him, but he was offering her something no one else ever had. A real choice. Not survival or exile. Not invisible safety or visible destruction. A chance to fight back. "What do I have to do?" she asked. Adrian's smile turned predatory. "Tomorrow night, there's a private card game at Sir Harold Vance's estate. Pembridge will be there. Ashford, too, probably, trying to win back enough to pay his debts. We're going to that game." "How?" "They won't let me in. They won't let Clara Whitmore in, but they'll let in my sister." Clara stared at him. "You want me to pretend to be your sister?" "Lily hasn't been seen in society for over a year. No one knows what she looks like now. You're the right age, the right build, with the right dress and the right story. You could pass." "And then what?" "Then we sit at that card table and we take everything they have. We clean them out completely, make them so desperate they can't afford to come after you or your family. We destroy them the same way they plan to destroy you." "That's insane." "Probably." Adrian stood. "But it's also the only way. Unless you have a better plan." Clara thought about Eliza, safe and oblivious. About her mother, desperately clinging to respectability. About a life spent being invisible while everyone else mattered. "I don't know how to play cards," she said. "You don't have to. I'll play. You just have to sit there and look fragile. Can you do that?" Clara thought about everything she'd done in the past week. Breaking into a room, climbing along a ledge, confronting a villain, hitting her own sister. Sitting at a card table and looking fragile? That should be easy. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." "Good." Adrian moved toward the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we prepare. Tomorrow night we go to war." He left, and Clara sat alone in the gathering darkness. She should be terrified. Should be planning her escape. Should be running as far from this mess as possible. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt alive. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Mrs. Hartley, after a blistering conversation with Adrian that Clara only heard parts of, grudgingly helped alter one of Lily's dresses to fit Clara. It was deep green silk, far more elegant than anything Clara had ever worn. "You're going to get His Grace killed," Mrs. Hartley muttered as she pinned the hem. "This is suicide." "Then why are you helping?" The old woman's hands paused. "Because maybe suicide is better than the slow death he's been dying these past 2 years. At least this way he's fighting." Adrian spent the afternoon teaching Clara the basics of what to expect, who would be there, what they'd say, how to respond. "Vance will try to intimidate you. Don't let him. Pembridge will try to charm you. Don't believe him. Ashford—" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Ashford will be desperate. That makes him dangerous. Stay close to me." "What if something goes wrong?" "Then we improvise." He looked at her seriously. "I won't let them hurt you, Clara. Whatever happens, I promise you that." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." Evening came too quickly. Clara stood in front of the mirror in Lily's dress, barely recognizing herself. Mrs. Hartley had done something to her hair, pinning it up in a style that made her look younger, more delicate. She looked like someone important. She looked like someone who mattered. "Ready?" Adrian appeared in the doorway, dressed impeccably in black. "No." "Good. Fear will keep you sharp." He offered his arm. "Come on, little sister. Let's go ruin some lives." The carriage ride to Vance's estate took 30 minutes. Clara spent every second fighting nausea. "What if they recognize me?" she asked, for the 10th time. "They won't. You were invisible before, remember? That's your advantage." "What if they ask about Lily, about her illness?" "Tell them the truth. She's been unwell, but she's recovering. Keep it vague. People don't actually want details. They just want reassurance that everything's fine." The carriage stopped. Through the window, Clara could see a large manor house, lit up against the night sky. "This is it," Adrian said quietly. "Last chance to back out." Clara thought about Pembridge's threat, about Ashford's cruelty, about a life spent being invisible and afraid. "Let's go." They climbed out of the carriage. The entrance hall was full of men, wealthy, powerful, the kind who made decisions about other people's lives over cards and brandy. Several turned to look as Adrian and Clara entered. "Hale," someone called out. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Nor I you, Bentley. Gentlemen, may I present my sister, Miss Lily Hale." Clara felt every eye in the room turn to her. Assessing, judging, wondering. She kept her chin up and her expression calm. "Charmed," she murmured. Vance appeared from a side room, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation as he saw Clara. "Miss Hale, what a delightful surprise. We'd heard you were unwell." "I'm much recovered, thank you." "Clearly." His eyes raked over her in a way that made Clara's skin crawl. "And brave enough to attend a card game. How refreshing." "My sister wanted to observe," Adrian said smoothly. "I hope that's acceptable." Of course, of course. Though I must warn you, Miss Hale, the stakes tonight are rather high. Not for the faint of heart." Clara smiled sweetly. "I'm tougher than I look, Sir Harold." "I do hope so." They moved into the card room. It was smaller than Clara expected, dominated by a large table where 6 chairs were arranged. 5 of them were occupied. Pembridge sat at one end, already drunk from the look of him. 2 men Clara didn't recognize flanked the table, and at the far end, looking haggard and desperate, Ashford. His eyes widened when he saw Adrian. Then they slid to Clara, and she saw him trying to place her, recognition dancing just out of reach. "Hale," he said carefully. "And Miss Hale. How unexpected." "Ashford." Adrian's voice was cold. "I trust you're well?" "Well enough." "Excellent. Then you won't mind if I take the empty seat?" Vance hesitated, clearly not having expected Adrian to actually play, but refusing would be an insult he couldn't afford. "Of course, please." Adrian sat. Clara took up a position behind him, playing the role of supportive sister. From here, she could see everyone's faces. Could see Pembridge's barely suppressed rage, Vance's calculating coldness, Ashford's growing desperation as he stared at his cards. The game began. Clara didn't understand half of what was happening, the bets, the bluffs, the careful strategy. But she watched Adrian work and saw something almost beautiful in it. He was destroying them. Methodically, ruthlessly, he drained their resources. Pembridge lost first, throwing down his cards with a curse and reaching for more brandy. One of the unknown men folded 20 minutes later. That left Ashford, Vance, and Adrian. The stakes climbed higher. Vance was sweating now despite the cool room. Ashford looked like he might be sick. 10,000, Adrian said calmly. Vance paled. I don't have... Then fold. I can't. I'm in too deep already. Then match the bet or lose everything. Vance looked at his cards, at the pile of money already on the table, at Adrian's expressionless face. I need to retrieve something from my study. A deed. Property. It's worth easily 20,000. Go. Vance practically ran from the room. That left Ashford and Adrian alone at the table. Ashford's hands were shaking as he reached for his cards. You're doing this on purpose, he said quietly. This whole thing, bringing her here, the game. You're trying to ruin me. I don't have to try. You've done that yourself. I needed that wager. The money. I have debts, Hale. Serious debts. If I don't pay, then you'll face the consequences of your choices, just like everyone else. Please, Ashford's voice broke. I'll leave England. I'll never bother the Whitmores again. Just let me keep enough to pay off the money lenders. No. Something in Ashford snapped. Clara saw it happen, saw reason leave his eyes, replaced by pure desperation. His hand went to his coat. Adrian, Clara started. Ashford pulled out a pistol. The room froze. I'm not leaving here with nothing, Ashford said, his voice high and tight. I'll kill you if I have to. Kill you both. Blame it on a robbery. I don't care anymore. Adrian stood slowly, hands raised. Ashford, think about what you're doing. I have thought about it. I'm out of options, out of time. This is my last chance. He pointed the gun at Adrian's chest. Clara moved without thinking. She grabbed a heavy candlestick from the side table and swung it at Ashford's head. The impact made a sickening sound. Ashford dropped like a stone, the pistol falling from his hand. The door burst open. Vance rushed in, saw Ashford on the floor, saw the pistol, saw Clara holding the candlestick. What have you done? He whispered. Clara looked down at Ashford's motionless form. What I had to, she said. Her hands were shaking. The candlestick fell from her grip, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Adrian moved to Ashford's side, checking for a pulse. He's alive. Unconscious, but alive. We should call for a doctor, one of the other men said. We should call for the magistrate, Vance countered. She assaulted him. That's self-defense, Adrian cut him off. He pulled a gun. Everyone in this room saw it. Miss Hale defended herself and me. Any magistrate would agree. But Clara barely heard him. She was staring at her hands, at the blood on them from where the candlestick had cut her palm. She'd hit someone. Again. First Eliza, now Ashford. When had she become someone capable of violence? Adrian's hand on her shoulder made her flinch. Clara, look at me. She did. His eyes were steady, grounding. You saved my life, he said quietly. Do you understand that? He was going to shoot. You stopped him. I could have killed him. But you didn't, and even if you had, it would have been justified. Vance was shouting something about the scandal, about calling for help, about how this was going to destroy everyone involved. Pembridge had passed out in his chair. The other men were backing toward the door, clearly wanting nothing to do with whatever came next. And Clara stood there in her borrowed dress, covered in someone else's blood, and realized with perfect clarity that her old life was completely over. There was no going back, no returning to being invisible, no pretending this hadn't happened. She'd crossed a line tonight, several lines, and there was no uncrossing them. We need to leave, Adrian said. Now, before Vance finds his courage and actually calls for someone. What about, Clara gestured at Ashford. He'll survive. And when he wakes up, he'll have a choice. Admit he pulled a gun at a card game and tried to commit murder, or stay quiet and accept that he lost everything. Either way, he's finished. Adrian grabbed the money from the table, thousands of pounds, and shoved it into a bag. This is theft, Vance protested weakly. This is payment, for the wager, For the threats, for every moment of misery you and your friends caused an innocent family. Consider yourselves lucky I'm not taking more." He grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her toward the door. They ran through the manor house, ignoring the shouts behind them, ignoring the servants who stared. Into the carriage. Adrian shouted at the driver to move, and they were off, wheels clattering over cobblestones, racing into the night. Clara sat in the darkness of the carriage, hands still shaking, mind still reeling. "Did that really just happen?" she whispered. "Yes. I hit him. I could have killed him. But you didn't. What if I had?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Then we would have dealt with it," he said finally. "Together." Clara looked at him, this duke who'd risked everything tonight to help her fight back. This stranger who'd become an ally, a friend, maybe something more she didn't have words for yet. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "Really? Why risk so much for me?" Adrian met her eyes in the dim light of the carriage. "Because someone should have done it for my wife. Someone should have fought for her when she needed it. No one did. She died alone and afraid, and no one stopped it." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't save her, but I could save you, so I did." The raw honesty of it took Clara's breath away. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be. Just don't waste this, Clara. Don't waste the life you fought for. Promise me that." "I promise." The carriage rolled through the night, carrying them back to Thornfield House, carrying them away from everything that had been, carrying them toward something Clara couldn't name yet. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it. She was ready. She was ready. The carriage wheels hit a rut in the road and Clara's shoulders slammed against the wall. The jolt brought her back to the present, to the reality of what she'd just done. Her hand throbbed where the candlestick had cut her palm. The blood had dried sticky between her fingers. "Let me see that," Adrian said. Clara held out her hand. He examined it in the dim light filtering through the carriage window, his touch surprisingly gentle. "It's not deep. Mrs. Hartley can bandage it properly when we get back." He pulled out a handkerchief and wrapped it around her palm. "How's your head? You look pale." "I just assaulted a lord with a candlestick." "Technically, you defended us both from an armed man. There's a difference." "Will a magistrate see it that way?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "If it comes to that, yes, but it won't. Ashford can't report what happened without admitting he pulled a gun at a card game because he was losing. Vance won't talk either. He'd have to explain why he was hosting illegal gambling. They're trapped by their own choices." Clara wanted to believe him, but her hands were still shaking, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ashford crumpling to the floor. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we go home. Tomorrow we figure out the next step." "And my family?" Pembridge threatened. "Pembridge is currently passed out drunk in Vance's card room with no money and no leverage. He's not threatening anyone." Adrian leaned back against the seat. "We won everything, Clara. Every pound they put on the table. That was their safety net, their way out of debt. Without it, they're finished. So they'll be even more desperate." "Probably. But desperation makes people sloppy. They'll make mistakes. We won't." The confidence in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Clara realize how completely she'd tied herself to this man's fate. If he was wrong, if they'd miscalculated, they'd both pay the price. The carriage pulled up to Thornfield House just as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. Clara hadn't realized how long they'd been gone. Mrs. Hartley was waiting in the entrance hall, her expression thunderous. "You took her to Vance's," she said flatly. "You actually took her there." "Yes. And we won." Mrs. Hartley's eyes went to Clara's wrapped hand, to the blood on her dress, to her pale face. Her expression softened fractionally. "Come with me, miss. We'll get you cleaned up." She led Clara upstairs to a washroom Clara hadn't seen before. A fire was already burning in the grate, and hot water steamed in a porcelain basin. "Sit," Mrs. Hartley ordered. Clara sat. The old woman unwrapped the makeshift bandage and examined the cut with professional efficiency. "This needs proper cleaning. It'll sting." It did more than sting. It burned like fire. Clara bit her lip to keep from crying out. "You did well tonight," Mrs. Hartley said as she worked. "His Grace told me what happened, what you did." I could have killed him. But you didn't. You measured the blow, controlled it. That takes more strength than most people have. She finished wrapping a clean bandage around Clara's palm. You're tougher than you look, Miss Whitmore. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. Mrs. Hartley stood. Get some rest. You'll need it for what's coming. What is coming? The old woman's smile was grim. The fallout. Men like Ashford and Vance don't lose quietly. They'll strike back somehow. The question is when and how. She left Clara alone with those comforting thoughts. Clara changed out of the blood-stained dress with trembling hands. Every movement hurt. Her palm where the candlestick had cut it. Her shoulder from hitting the carriage wall. Her head from the brandy and the fear and the adrenaline crash. She was climbing into bed when a soft knock sounded at her door. Clara, are you awake? Adrian's voice. Clara wrapped a robe around herself and opened the door. He'd changed as well, traded his formal clothes for simpler shirt and trousers. He looked exhausted. I wanted to check on you, he said. Make sure you're all right. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Clara almost smiled. So are you. You said this would be simple. I said we'd win. We did. Winning isn't supposed to feel like this. Adrian stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Propriety would have demanded she object, but Clara was too tired to care about propriety. After my wife died, he said quietly, I spent months trying to feel something other than numb. I picked fights, made reckless investments, drove away everyone who tried to help. Nothing worked. I just felt empty, like someone had hollowed me out and forgotten to put anything back. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. What changed? Tonight, watching you fight, watching you refuse to be a victim. He looked at her with those intense eyes. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something again, to be angry enough to act instead of just existing. I'm not sure that's a good thing. It's the only thing that matters. He moved to the window, looking out at the grounds. Tomorrow, we need to deal with your family. They need to know you're safe, that the threats are neutralized. Clara's stomach clenched. They won't want to hear from me. They don't have a choice. You save them whether they like it or not. He turned back to face her. I'll send word to your mother, explain what happened with Ashford and his associates. Make it clear that the danger has passed. She won't believe you. She will when she sees the settlement. What settlement? Adrian's smile was sharp. The money we won tonight, I'm giving half to your family, anonymously through a solicitor, enough to pay off their debts and secure their future. They'll never know it came from you. Clara stared at him. That's thousands of pounds. You can't just... I can and I am. Consider it payment for services rendered. You helped me tonight more than you know. By almost getting you shot? By reminding me what it's like to have someone stand beside me instead of behind me. His voice softened. My wife was like you. Brave, reckless, too stubborn to know when to quit. I loved that about her, but I also failed her when she needed me most. I won't make that mistake again. The raw honesty in his voice made Clara's throat tight. What happened to her? She asked quietly. If you don't mind me asking. Adrian was silent for a long moment. She got sick. Something the doctors couldn't diagnose, couldn't treat. For months she got weaker, thinner, until she was just fading. And I stood by and watched because I believed the doctors when they said there was nothing to be done. I believed them instead of believing her when she said something was wrong. By the time I realized they were wrong, it was too late. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just don't make my mistakes. Don't trust the wrong people. Don't wait for someone else to save you. He moved toward the door. Get some sleep, Clara. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding. He left before she could ask what exactly they were rebuilding. Clara lay awake as the sun rose, thinking about everything that had happened. A week ago, she'd been a governess with no prospects, watching her sister fall for a con artist. Now she was living in a duke's house, had assaulted a lord, and was apparently helping said duke reclaim his life. How had everything changed so fast? She must have eventually slept because she woke to bright sunlight and another knock at her door. This time it was a maid with a breakfast tray and a note. Family matters require my attention today. Rest. We'll talk tonight. Clara ate mechanically, then spent the day in a strange limbo. She tried to read but couldn't focus, tried to walk the grounds but felt exposed. Finally settled in the library, staring at the books without seeing them. Mrs. Hartley found her there in the late afternoon. "His Grace asked me to show you something," the old woman said. "Come with me." She led Clara up 2 flights of stairs to a wing of the house Clara hadn't explored. They stopped outside a door painted pale blue. "This is Miss Lily's room," Mrs. Hartley said. "She's awake, and she's asking for you." Clara's heart jumped. "Why me? She doesn't even know me." "His Grace told her about last night, about what you did. She wants to meet the woman brave enough to hit a lord with a candlestick." Mrs. Hartley's expression was unreadable. "Don't let her fool you with the fragile act. She's tougher than she looks, just like you." She opened the door and gestured Clara inside. The room was bright and airy, nothing like the tomb-like atmosphere of the rest of the house. Windows overlooked the gardens. Books covered every surface, and in a chair by the window sat a girl who looked like a ghost. Lily Hale was 16 but looked younger, thin to the point of gaunt, with dark hair that hung limp around a face that was all sharp angles and enormous eyes. She wore a pale gray dress that made her look even more washed out, but her eyes were bright and alert and completely focused on Clara. "So you're the one," Lily said. Her voice was soft but clear. "The one who made my brother care about something again." Clara moved into the room carefully, like approaching a wild animal. "I don't know about that." "I do. He hasn't looked that alive in 2 years, not since—" She stopped, looked away. "Not since our mother died. That's what the doctors won't tell you. It wasn't just Caroline. We lost our mother 6 months before that. Adrian had to watch her die slowly, and then he had to watch his wife die the same way. It broke something in him." Clara sat in the chair across from Lily. "Mrs. Hartley said you wanted to see me." "I wanted to see the woman who broke into a man's room, confronted a villain, and survived being trapped on a ledge 3 stories up." Lily's smile was ghostly. "Adrian told me everything. He thinks I'm too fragile to handle the truth, but I'm not. I'm just stuck." "Stuck how?" "Stuck in this room. Stuck in this body that won't work right. Stuck watching everyone tiptoe around me like I'm made of glass." Lily's hands clenched on the arms of her chair. "The doctors say there's nothing wrong with me, that it's all in my head. But I'm so tired all the time, so weak. It's like something's draining the life out of me and no one can see it." Clara thought about what Adrian had said, about doctors who didn't listen, about his wife fading while everyone insisted nothing was wrong. "Have they tested your blood?" Clara asked. Lily blinked. "What?" "Your blood. When I was a governess in London, one of my employer's children had similar symptoms: fatigue, weakness, couldn't eat. The doctors insisted it was nervousness. But the mother found a physician who specialized in blood disorders. Turns out the child had severe anemia. Once they treated it, she recovered completely." Lily was staring at her like Clara had just spoken a foreign language. "No one's mentioned testing my blood." "Because they're not looking for a physical cause. They've already decided you're just anxious or hysterical or whatever convenient diagnosis lets them dismiss you." Clara leaned forward. "What if we found a different doctor, one who actually listens?" "Adrian's tried. He's brought in specialists from London, from Edinburgh." "Specialists in what? Nervous disorders? Female hysteria?" Clara's voice was sharp. "What you need is someone who treats the body, not someone who treats vapors and bad humors. A real physician." For the first time since Clara had entered the room, Lily looked hopeful. "You really think—" "I think you deserve someone who takes you seriously, and I think your brother would move heaven and earth to find that person if he thought it would help." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed, a real laugh, startled and genuine. "You don't know him very well yet, do you?" "What do you mean?" "Adrian's convinced himself I'm dying the same way Caroline died, the same way our mother died. He's so terrified of losing me that he can't think clearly about it. Every doctor he brings in is looking for the same thing, some mysterious wasting disease that can't be treated. He's not looking for simple answers because simple answers mean he could have saved them if he'd just looked harder." The psychology of it made Clara's chest ache. "Then we don't tell him what we're looking for. We just find the right doctor and present Adrian with results instead of theories." "How?" Clara thought fast. "Catherine. Lady Catherine Pembroke. She knows everyone in London. If there's a physician who specializes in blood disorders, she'll know how to find them. And if you're wrong, if it's not anemia, if I really am just broken, then at least we tried. That's more than anyone else has done. Lily studied her with those two bright eyes. You're different from the others. The companions Adrian's hired before were all so careful, so gentle, like they were afraid I'd shatter if they spoke too loudly. I'm not a companion. I'm just... Clara paused. What was she? I'm just someone who knows what it's like to be dismissed. Good. Lily's smile was stronger now. I don't need gentle. I need someone who'll fight. A commotion downstairs interrupted them. Raised voices, the sound of the front door slamming. Clara stood. What's happening? I don't know, but it doesn't sound good. They moved to the door together. Lily was unsteady on her feet, and Clara offered her arm for support. Downstairs, the entrance hall was chaos. Adrian stood near the door, facing three men in official-looking clothes. One of them was holding a document that looked legal and intimidating. This is a warrant for the arrest of Miss Clara Whitmore, the man was saying, on charges of assault against Lord Geoffrey Ashford. Clara's blood turned to ice. That's absurd, Adrian said. Miss Whitmore acted in self-defense. Ashford drew a weapon. Lord Ashford tells a different story. He claims Miss Whitmore attacked him unprovoked during a private card game. He has witnesses. Those witnesses are liars and criminals. Nevertheless, the warrant is valid. We need to take Miss Whitmore into custody pending a formal hearing. Clara's mind raced. This was it. The revenge Ashford had promised. He couldn't win fairly, so he'd turned to the law. She started down the stairs before she fully realized what she was doing. Clara, don't, Adrian warned, but she kept moving. Lily's hand slipped from her arm as Clara descended to face the men. I'm Clara Whitmore, she said clearly. The lead man looked at her with professional neutrality. Miss Whitmore, you're under arrest. You'll need to come with us. On what evidence? Lord Ashford's word? Lord Ashford's testimony, plus sworn statements from Sir Harold Vance and Lord Pembridge. Of course, the three of them had coordinated their revenge. Did these sworn statements mention that Lord Ashford pulled a gun? Clara asked. Did they mention that I was defending myself and the Duke of Thornfield? The man hesitated fractionally. That's for the magistrate to determine. Then let's go to the magistrate. Right now, I have nothing to hide. Adrian moved to her side. She's not going anywhere without legal representation. I'll accompany her. That's not... I'm a duke. She's under my protection. Unless you want to arrest me as well, you'll allow me to come. The three men exchanged glances. Arresting a duke was clearly beyond their mandate. Fine, the lead man said finally, but we leave now. The ride to the magistrate's office took an hour. Clara spent it trying to think through her defense. But everything came back to the same problem. It was her word against three lords. Three men with money, power, and the kind of connections that made magistrates nervous. The magistrate turned out to be an elderly man named Sir Edmund Grey. He looked tired and irritated at having his evening interrupted. Let's make this quick, he said, shuffling papers on his desk. Miss Whitmore, you're accused of assault against Lord Geoffrey Ashford. How do you plead? Not guilty. I acted in self-defense. Lord Ashford claims you attacked him without provocation. Lord Ashford is lying. Sir Edmund's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation. Not as serious as attempted murder. Ashford pulled a pistol and aimed it at the Duke of Thornfield. I stopped him. That's not assault. That's defense of life. Do you have witnesses to support this version of events? Yes. Duke Thornfield was there. So were several other gentlemen. Duke Thornfield is clearly biased in your favor. As for the other gentlemen, Sir Edmund consulted his papers. Sir Harold Vance and Lord Pembridge have both provided statements supporting Lord Ashford's account. They say you attacked him during a card game when you became upset about losing. I wasn't playing cards. I was observing. Nevertheless, two lords against your word, you understand the difficulty of your position. Adrian stepped forward. Sir Edmund, with respect, this is clearly a coordinated attempt at revenge. Lord Ashford lost a significant sum of money to me last night. He's using the legal system to punish Miss Whitmore for his own failures. Can you prove that? Can he prove his accusations? Where's the gun he claims to have been defending himself with? Where's the evidence of unprovoked assault? Sir Edmund looked uncomfortable. Lord Ashford claims the gun was taken by one of the other guests in the confusion. How convenient. Adrian's voice dripped sarcasm. A weapon that exists in his story but mysteriously disappeared before anyone could examine it. Be that as it may, I have 2 sworn statements against one woman's word. I'm afraid I have no choice but to— The door to the office burst open. Catherine Pembroke swept in like an avenging angel, followed by 2 men Clara didn't recognize. Sir Edmund, Catherine said briskly, I apologize for the interruption, but I have information relevant to this case. The magistrate looked flustered. Lady Catherine, this is highly irregular. So is arresting an innocent woman based on the lies of 3 criminals. Catherine placed a document on his desk. This is a sworn statement from Dr. James Whitfield, the physician who treated Lord Ashford last night. It details a head wound consistent with defensive action, not unprovoked assault. It also notes bruising on Ashford's gun hand, evidence that he was, in fact, holding a weapon. Sir Edmund picked up the document, reading quickly. There's more, Catherine continued. Mr. Thomas Bennet here, she gestured to one of the men with her, is a professional gambler who was also present at Vance's card game. He's willing to testify that Lord Ashford became violent when he realized he was losing badly, that he pulled a weapon and threatened the Duke of Thornfield. Bennet nodded. It's all true, sir. I saw the whole thing. The young lady only acted to protect his grace. Sir Edmund looked between the documents and the witnesses, clearly recalculating. And the other gentleman? He asked, gesturing to the second man. Mr. Henry Carlyle, Catherine said, Lord Pembridge's former solicitor. He's prepared to testify about certain financial irregularities involving all 3 accusers, Ashford, Vance, and Pembridge. Specifically, their involvement in multiple schemes to defraud wealthy families through fake courtships. There are at least 4 other cases similar to what was attempted with the Whitmore family. The magistrate's face had gone from tired to deeply uncomfortable. These are serious allegations. Yes, which is why I suggest you dismiss the charges against Miss Whitmore and open an investigation into the 3 men who brought them. Catherine's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Unless you'd prefer to be associated with covering up their crimes. Sir Edmund clearly did not prefer that. The charges against Miss Whitmore are dismissed, he said quickly. Miss Whitmore, you're free to go. As for the other matter, I'll need time to review these documents properly. Of course, Catherine said sweetly. I'm happy to provide any additional information you need. They were ushered out of the office quickly before Sir Edmund could change his mind. In the street outside, Clara turned to Catherine. When did you? Adrian sent word this morning, told me what happened, asked if I could help. Catherine smiled. Turns out, tracking down evidence against terrible men is something of a specialty of mine. Ashford and his friends have been running schemes for years. It just took someone bothering to look. The doctor, the gambler, the solicitor? All real. All willing to testify. Ashford's reign of terror is over. Catherine looked at Adrian. Though I imagine he'll try one more desperate move before he accepts defeat. Men like him always do. Let him try, Adrian said quietly. We'll be ready. They rode back to Thornfield in Catherine's carriage. Clara felt like she was moving through a dream. I don't understand, she said finally. Why would these men risk themselves to testify against lords? Because I paid them, Catherine said bluntly. Well, Adrian paid them technically, but money was never the issue. The issue was finding people with enough courage and enough evidence to speak up. Turns out, Ashford made a lot of enemies over the years. They were happy to finally have a chance to strike back. Clara looked at Adrian. You arranged all this today? Catherine did most of it. I just pointed her in the right direction. Don't be modest, Catherine said. You also threatened to ruin anyone who didn't cooperate. That helped considerably. For the first time in days, Clara laughed. It came out shakier than she intended, but it was real. Thank you, she said to both of them. I don't know how to repay. You don't repay it, Catherine interrupted. You pay it forward. Help someone else when they need it. That's how this works. Back at Thornfield, Mrs. Hartley was waiting with the news that Lily had eaten a full meal for the first time in weeks. "She's asking for you," the housekeeper told Clara. "Won't stop talking about blood tests and London physicians. What did you say to her?" "I told her she deserved to be taken seriously." Mrs. Hartley's expression softened. No one's told her that before. Clara climbed the stairs to Lily's room. The girl was sitting up in bed, color in her cheeks that hadn't been there this morning. "You're back," Lily said. "Adrian told me what happened. You were arrested?" "Briefly, it's been handled. By Catherine Pembroke." Lily smiled. "I like her. She doesn't treat people like they're made of glass, either." Clara sat in the chair by the bed. "Your brother said you ate." "I was hungry. Actually hungry, for the first time in months." Lily's eyes were bright. "It's strange. Just talking about the possibility of a real diagnosis, a real treatment, it made me feel less helpless. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." "Catherine's staying the night. She said she knows a physician in London, a Dr. Marcus Webb. He specializes in blood disorders and actually listens to his patients, apparently. She's going to arrange a consultation." Hope was dangerous, Clara knew, but looking at Lily's face, seeing that spark of life, maybe some risks were worth taking. "When?" Clara asked. "Next week, if I'm strong enough to travel." "You'll be strong enough." Lily reached out and took Clara's hand. "Stay, please. I know Adrian offered you a position, but I'm asking for myself. Stay and help me fight this." Clara thought about her family, still believing she'd destroyed everything. About Ashford and his associates, still out there somewhere planning their next move. About a future that was completely uncertain. Then she thought about Lily's hand in hers. About Adrian's fierce protectiveness. About Catherine's easy friendship. About a house that was starting to feel less like a tomb and more like a home. "I'll stay," Clara said. "For as long as you need me." Lily's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. The next morning, Clara woke to find a letter had been delivered during the night. It was from her mother. Clara's hand shook as she opened it. "Clara, I don't know where to begin. We received a settlement yesterday from a London solicitor. Anonymous, he said, but enough to pay all our debts and secure Eliza's future. The timing seems too convenient to be coincidence. Your sister told me what she said to you, about jealousy and bitterness. She was wrong. I was wrong. We were all wrong. I don't know what you did or how you did it. I don't know if I want to know, but whatever danger you faced, whatever sacrifices you made, they worked. We're safe. Eliza has prospects again. The family name is secure. I wish I could say, I always knew you were capable of this. But the truth is, I didn't see you. Not really. I saw the practical daughter, the sensible one, the one who would always be there to pick up the pieces. I didn't see the warrior underneath. I see you now. Please come home when you're ready. Or don't. I'll understand either way, but know that you're welcome here. Always. Your mother." Clara read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She'd spent her whole life being invisible, being overlooked, being the one who sacrificed while everyone else shined. But she wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, recognized, valued. It wasn't everything. Her relationship with her family would need time to heal. Eliza would need to understand what had really happened. There would be awkward conversations and painful truths, but it was a start. Clara folded the letter carefully and placed it in her writing desk. Then she went downstairs to find Adrian. He was in his study, surrounded by papers. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Your family?" he asked. "They know. They're grateful. They want me to come home. And will you?" Clara moved to the window, looking out at the grounds. The sun was shining. The gardens, which had looked so dead and abandoned when she arrived, were showing signs of spring. "Eventually," she said, "but not yet. I have work to do here first, a girl who needs help, a duke who needs someone to argue with him occasionally, a house that needs life breathed back into it." She turned to face him. "If the offer still stands." Adrian's smile was slow and genuine and transformed his entire face. "The offer stands. Though I should warn you, Mrs. Hartley says you're terrible at following orders." "Mrs. Hartley is wise. And Lily's already planning your entire schedule. Apparently there's a trip to London next week. For the physician, Dr. Webb. Among other things, Adrian stood and moved to stand beside her at the window. Catherine thinks we should make a social appearance, show everyone that we're not hiding, that we have nothing to be ashamed of. Do we? Not a damn thing. He looked at her seriously. You saved my life, Clara. You saved my sister's hope. You reminded me what it's like to feel something other than grief. That's not nothing. You saved me too, from Ashford, from desperation, from a life of being invisible. So we're even. Not even close, but it's a start. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher. Outside, the world was waking up. Somewhere, Ashford and his associates were dealing with the consequences of their actions. Somewhere, Clara's family was reading her mother's letter and trying to understand how their invisible daughter had become someone extraordinary. And here, in Thornfield House, two broken people were starting to heal. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet. There was too much still uncertain, too much still broken. But it was a beginning. And sometimes Clara thought beginnings were even better than endings. They meant anything was possible. They meant anything was possible. The words stayed with Clara through the rest of the morning. She helped Lily with her exercises. Simple movements that left the girl exhausted, but smiling. She reviewed household accounts with Mrs. Hartley, who grudgingly admitted that Clara had a head for numbers. She wrote a careful letter back to her mother, saying she'd visit soon but had commitments to honor first. It felt like building something, not just repairing what was broken, but creating something entirely new. 3 days before the planned trip to London, everything changed again. Clara was in the library when Adrian found her, his face grim. We have a problem. She set down her book. What kind of problem? Ashford's dead. The room tilted. Clara gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Dead? How? They're calling it suicide. He was found this morning in his lodgings, gunshot wound. Adrian's jaw was tight, but the timing is convenient, too convenient. The magistrate was scheduled to question him today about the fraud allegations. Clara's mind raced. You think someone killed him? I think desperate men do desperate things. And I think Vance and Pembridge had more to lose from Ashford's testimony than from his death. He moved to the window. There's more. Vance is claiming I threatened Ashford, that I drove him to suicide through harassment and intimidation. That's insane. It's also potentially effective. If Vance can paint me as the villain, he deflects attention from his own crimes. And if he can tie you to it, say you were acting on my orders when you assaulted Ashford, he makes us both look guilty. What do we do? Adrian turned to face her, and Clara saw something fierce in his expression. We go to London. Today. We get ahead of this story before Vance can control the narrative. He paused. And we bring Lily. She's strong enough to travel, and having her with us sends a message. We're not hiding. We're not running. We have nothing to be ashamed of. Clara thought about the fragile girl upstairs, still recovering. Are you sure she can handle this? I'm sure she needs to try. She's been trapped in that room for a year, Clara, trapped by fear and weakness, and everyone telling her she's too fragile to live. If we're going to fight, she deserves to be part of it. He was right. Clara knew he was right. When do we leave? 2 hours, pack light. We'll be staying with Catherine. She's already made arrangements. The next 2 hours were chaos. Mrs. Hartley packed with military efficiency while muttering about foolish dukes and suicidal missions. Lily was so excited she could barely sit still long enough to be dressed. Adrian coordinated with his staff, sending messages ahead to London, preparing for every contingency. Clara packed her few belongings and tried not to think about everything that could go wrong. They left Thornfield as the sun was setting, 3 people in a well-sprung carriage racing toward either salvation or disaster. Lily fell asleep almost immediately, her head resting against Clara's shoulder. Adrian sat across from them, silent and watchful. Tell me honestly, Clara said quietly. How bad is this? Bad enough. Vance has connections, money, the ability to make lies sound like truth. If he convinces enough people that Ashford was a victim, we'll both be pariahs. Adrian's voice was steady. But he's also overplayed his hand. Ashford was a known gambler and cheat. The fraud allegations were starting to surface. Vance is trying to rewrite history, but history has a way of refusing to be rewritten. And if it doesn't work, if people believe him, then we deal with the consequences together. He looked at Lily's sleeping form. I've spent 2 years protecting her from everything, but maybe what she really needed was someone who'd teach her to protect herself, the way you do. I'm not that brave. You climbed along a third-floor ledge in the dark. You hit a man with a candlestick to save my life. You're exactly that brave. You just don't see it yet. Clara looked out the window at the darkening countryside rushing past. I was a governess a month ago, she said. Invisible. Overlooked? Now I'm traveling to London to fight a smear campaign against a duke. How did this become my life? You chose it. That's how. Adrian's smile was slight. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding choices. You ran toward them. That's rare. They reached London just after midnight. Catherine's townhouse was ablaze with lights, and the woman herself met them at the door. You made good time, she said, ushering them inside. Come. I have news, and you're not going to like it. They settled in Catherine's drawing room, Clara and Adrian on a sofa, Lily curled in an armchair with a blanket, looking pale but determined. Catherine paced. Vance has been busy. He spread the story through every club, every drawing room, every newspaper that would listen. According to him, Ashford was a respectable lord driven to desperation by your persecution. You, Adrian, used your title to destroy him, and you, Clara, were the weapon he wielded, a desperate woman willing to do anything for a duke's protection. Clara felt sick. People believe this? Some do, some don't. The truth is somewhere in the middle, which is exactly where Vance wants it. Muddy the waters enough and everyone looks guilty. What about the evidence? Adrian asked. The fraud allegations, the witnesses? Being dismissed as paid liars. Vance is claiming you bribed them to destroy Ashford's reputation. Catherine stopped pacing and faced them. He's also petitioning to have the charges against him dropped. Says the whole investigation was built on false testimony. So we're losing. We're not winning. There's a difference. Catherine sat down. But I have an idea. It's risky, possibly insane, but it might work. Tell us, Clara said. We hold a gathering. Here, tomorrow night. Invite everyone who matters, the people who influence society's opinions. We present our evidence publicly. Not in a courtroom where Vance can control the narrative, but in a social setting where the truth can spread organically. Adrian frowned. That could backfire spectacularly. If people don't believe us, then we're no worse off than we are now. But if they do believe us, if we can sway enough influential people, Vance's lies crumble. The magistrate will have to reopen the investigation. Ashford's death will be examined properly, and you both will be vindicated. Lily spoke up from her chair, voice soft but clear. Do it. They all looked at her. You've been protecting me for 2 years, Adrian, keeping me safe, keeping me hidden. But I'm tired of being safe. I'm tired of hiding. She sat up straighter. If we're going to fight, let's actually fight. Put everything on the table and let people decide. Clara saw Adrian's expression shift, pride and fear warring on his face. Lily, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I'm part of this family. Clara's part of this family now, too. We stand together or we don't stand at all. The simple declaration made Clara's throat tight. Catherine smiled. That's settled then. I'll send invitations tonight. We'll have 50 of London's most influential people here tomorrow evening, and we'll tell them the truth. What if the truth isn't enough? Clara asked. Then we'll make it enough. Catherine's eyes were fierce. I've been fighting men like Vance my whole life. They win when we're silent. They win when we're afraid. But when we stand up and refuse to be quiet, that's when they lose. The next day was a blur of preparation. Catherine's staff transformed the townhouse into a venue worthy of royalty. Clara helped Lily get ready, choosing a dress that made the girl look ethereal but strong. Adrian reviewed their evidence obsessively, making sure every detail was perfect. By evening, Clara was so nervous she could barely breathe. What if no one comes? She asked Catherine. Everyone will come. People love scandal. They just want to make sure they're backing the right side of it. Catherine adjusted Clara's dress, a deep blue that made her look confident and respectable. Remember, you're not the desperate governess anymore. You're the woman who saved her sister, exposed a fraud, and had the courage to stand up to powerful men. Own that. The guests began arriving at 8. Clara watched from the upper landing as London's elite filed into Catherine's drawing room. She recognized some from the house party, Lady Dunhaven, several other aristocratic families. Others were new, their faces curious and judgmental. Ready? Adrian appeared beside her, looking devastatingly handsome in formal black. No. Good. Neither am I. He offered his arm. Let's go anyway. They descended the stairs together. Lily followed, leaning on Mrs. Hartley's arm but holding her head high. The room fell silent as they entered. Catherine moved to the center of the room and clapped her hands once. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know you've heard stories about recent events involving Lord Ashford, the Duke of Thornfield, and Miss Clara Whitmore. Tonight, you're going to hear the truth. She gestured to Adrian. He stepped forward, and Clara saw the Duke in him, the power, the authority, the absolute refusal to be diminished. Lord Ashford died 3 days ago. Some of you have heard that I drove him to it through persecution and harassment. I'm here to tell you that's a lie, and I can prove it. He nodded to a servant who brought out a series of documents. This is a wager, signed by Lord Ashford and 3 associates. It details a scheme to seduce and publicly ruin Miss Eliza Whitmore for sport and profit. This is testimony from Dr. James Whitfield describing Ashford's attempt to shoot me when he was losing badly at cards. This is a deposition from Mr. Henry Carlyle detailing at least 4 other families Ashford and his associates defrauded using similar tactics. He laid the documents on a table where everyone could see them. These are facts, not rumors, not hearsay, facts. Lord Ashford was not a victim. He was a predator who finally faced consequences for his actions. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara saw some people leaning forward, interested. Others looked skeptical. Lady Dunhaven spoke up. These documents could be forged. They could be, Adrian agreed, which is why I've brought witnesses. Catherine opened a side door. In walked Dr. Whitfield, Mr. Bennet, the gambler, and Mr. Carlyle, the solicitor. Behind them came 2 more people Clara didn't recognize. Dr. Whitfield treated Lord Ashford the night he was injured, Adrian continued. Mr. Bennet witnessed the incident. Mr. Carlyle has documented evidence of fraud spanning 5 years, and these 2 people, he gestured to the newcomers, are former victims of Ashford's schemes. They're here to tell you their stories. What followed was devastating. The first woman, a widow named Mrs. Elizabeth Crawford, spoke about how Ashford had courted her daughter, promised marriage, and then destroyed her reputation when the family couldn't pay the debts he deliberately led them to incur. Her daughter had been sent to Ireland to avoid the scandal. She hadn't been home in 3 years. The second victim was a merchant's daughter. Her story was nearly identical. Courtship, promises, deliberate ruin when the family couldn't produce enough money to satisfy Ashford's debts. By the time they finished, the room was silent. Clara watched faces change, watched skepticism turn to horror, dismissal turn to outrage. Then Adrian did something Clara didn't expect. He stepped back and gestured to her. Miss Whitmore has her own story. I think you should hear it from her. Clara's heart stopped. They hadn't planned this. But Catherine was nodding encouragement. Lily was smiling, and Adrian's eyes said, "Trust me." Clara moved to the center of the room. 50 pairs of eyes focused on her, judging, waiting. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago. Invisible. Overlooked. Too afraid to speak up. That girl was gone. "My name is Clara Whitmore," she said, voice steady. 4 weeks ago, I overheard Lord Ashford and his associates laughing about a wager to destroy my sister. I could have done nothing. Most people would have. But I couldn't let her walk into that trap. She told them everything. Breaking into Ashford's room, the confrontation in the conservatory, Duke Hale's intervention, the threats from Pembridge, the card game where Ashford had pulled a gun. "I'm not a hero," Clara said. "I was terrified the entire time. I made mistakes. I acted rashly. But I also refused to let powerful men destroy someone I loved just because they could, just because no one had ever stopped them before." She looked directly at Lady Dunhaven. "You asked if the documents could be forged. They could. But why would we? What do I gain from lying? I was a governess. I have no money, no title, no power. The only thing I have is the truth. And the truth is that Lord Ashford was a monster who preyed on desperate families. He died because he couldn't face the consequences of his actions, not because anyone persecuted him. She stepped back, hands shaking, heart pounding. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. It was Lily. Standing now, without support, clapping with all her strength. Catherine joined her. Then Mrs. Hartley. Then Adrian. Slowly, others joined in. Not everyone, some people left, clearly unconvinced or unwilling to take sides. But enough stayed. Enough clapped. Enough looked at Clara with something like respect. Lady Dunhaven stood. "I believe you," she said simply. "I believe all of you, and I'll make sure others know the truth." Other voices joined hers, promises to speak to the magistrate, to pressure the investigation, to ensure Vance faced consequences. The tide was turning. The gathering broke up around midnight. People left in clusters, talking urgently, already spreading the story. Clara sat in Catherine's drawing room, exhausted and overwhelmed. "You did it," Catherine said, handing her a glass of wine. "You actually did it." "We did it. All of us." Adrian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Lady Dunhaven is one of the most influential women in London. If she's on our side, others will follow." "What about Vance and Pembridge?" "They're finished. The magistrate will have no choice but to investigate properly now, and with public opinion turning against them—" Adrian shook his head. "They're done." Lily curled up in a chair across from them, looking more alive than Clara had ever seen her. "I didn't fall," she said wonderingly. "I stood through the whole thing. I didn't get dizzy or weak or—" "Because you had something to fight for," Clara said. "That makes all the difference." "We still need to see Dr. Webb tomorrow," Adrian reminded her. "Don't get ahead of yourself." But he was smiling, actually smiling. Over the next week, London transformed around them. The magistrate officially ruled Ashford's death a suicide brought on by guilt over his crimes. Vance and Pembridge were formally charged with fraud. The investigation expanded to include other potential victims. Newspapers that had initially reported Vance's version of events now scrambled to print corrections. Society matrons who had whispered about Clara's scandalous behavior now invited her to tea. And Dr. Marcus Webb confirmed what Clara had suspected. Lily had severe anemia caused by an undiagnosed digestive disorder. With treatment, she'd make a full recovery. "It was that simple?" Lily asked, almost angry. "All this time, all the suffering, it was just anemia?" "It's never simple," Dr. Webb said kindly. "But yes, with proper diet, iron supplements, and treatment for the underlying condition, you should regain your strength completely." Lily burst into tears. Adrian held her while she cried, tears of relief and rage and hope all mixed together. Clara stood by the window and watched them, a family healing, coming back to life. "You did this," Catherine said quietly beside her. "You gave them their future back. They gave me mine too." 2 weeks later, Clara received a letter from Eliza. "Dear Clara, Mother told me everything, or at least everything she knows. I don't think I understand half of what you did or why you did it, but I know this. I was wrong. So wrong. About you, about Lord Ashford, about everything. I called you jealous and bitter. I said terrible things. And all the while you were risking your life to save me from something I was too foolish to see. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Please come home, even if just for a visit. I want to know my sister, the real one. Not the invisible girl I took for granted, but the woman who fought monsters and won." With love and regret, Eliza Clara read the letter 3 times, then showed it to Adrian. "Will you go?" he asked. "Yes, but not to stay. My place is here now, at least—" She hesitated. "At least if you still want me here." Adrian set down the letter and looked at her seriously. "Clara, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting." Her stomach clenched. "All right." "When Caroline died, I thought I died too. I went through the motions of living, but I wasn't actually alive. I was just existing, trying to protect Lily from the same fate, trying to hold together an estate I didn't care about anymore. And then you showed up." He moved closer. "You were supposed to be temporary, a solution to a problem, someone to help Lily while I figured out what came next. But you weren't temporary. You are. He stopped, searching for words. You're the first person in 2 years who made me want to actually live again. Who made me remember what it feels like to care about something, to fight for something. Clara's heart was racing. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. I'm in love with you. And I know it's too soon. I know you probably think I'm insane, but Clara kissed him. It was impulsive and reckless and probably a terrible idea, but she didn't care. When they broke apart, Adrian was staring at her like she'd performed a miracle. Is that a yes? He asked. It's a maybe. Ask me again in 6 months when we're not in crisis mode and I can think clearly. His laugh was startled and genuine. Fair enough. But Adrian, I love you too. I think I have since you threatened to destroy Ashford for me in the conservatory. Possibly since you told me I was brave instead of foolish. Definitely since you risked everything to save me from Vance. That's a lot of sinces. I'm making up for lost time. They kissed again, slower this time. Outside, London carried on its business. Inside, two broken people were becoming something whole. Clara did visit her family 3 weeks later. Adrian came with her, along with Lily, who insisted she was strong enough and proved it by walking unaided through the gardens. Her mother cried when she saw them. Eliza hugged Clara so hard she couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, Eliza whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, it's all right. It's not all right. I was horrible. You were scared. So was I. We're past it now. They spent 3 days there. Long enough to repair some of the damage. Long enough for Clara to see that her family was genuinely trying to understand what she'd been through. But it was also long enough to confirm what Clara already knew. This wasn't her home anymore. Home was Thornfield. Home was Lily's laughter as she grew stronger every day. Home was Adrian's smile when he looked at her. Home was Mrs. Hartley's grudging approval and Catherine's friendship and the life they were building together. On the last day, her mother pulled her aside. You're not coming back, are you? Clara shook her head. I can't. My life is there now. With the Duke? With all of them. They need me. And I need them. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she hugged Clara, really hugged her, not the perfunctory embrace they'd shared for years. Be happy, she said. That's all I want. Just be happy. I will. They left the next morning. As the carriage pulled away, Clara looked back one last time. Eliza and her mother stood in the doorway, waving. They looked smaller somehow, or maybe Clara had just grown. Regrets? Adrian asked. No, just closure, I think. Lily was asleep again, curled up on the opposite seat. She'd been tired, but insisted on making the trip. Every day she was stronger, more like the girl she was supposed to be. I have something to ask you, Adrian said. Clara turned to face him. Yes? Marry me. Her breath caught. You said to ask you again in 6 months. It's been 3 months. I'm rounding up. Marry me, Clara. That's not a proper proposal. Fine. He took her hand. Clara Whitmore, you are the bravest, most reckless, most extraordinary woman I've ever met. You saved my life. You saved my sister's life. You saved me from becoming a bitter old man in a tomb of a house. I love you. I want to spend whatever time we have making you happy. Will you marry me? Clara looked at their joined hands, at his face, open and hopeful in a way she'd never seen before, at the future stretching ahead of them, uncertain but full of possibility. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Lily woke up just in time to squeal with delight. They married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony at Thornfield. Catherine stood up for Clara. Lily, glowing with health, scattered flowers. Half of London's elite attended, eager to be part of the story they'd all watched unfold. Clara wore a dress that Catherine had commissioned, something elegant but not fussy, beautiful but practical. She looked like herself. Finally, completely herself. As she walked down the aisle toward Adrian, Clara thought about the invisible woman she'd been. The overlooked sister, the dismissed daughter, the governess no one noticed. That woman was gone, transformed not by magic or luck, but by her own choices. by her own courage. She'd risked everything, and she'd won everything that mattered. Adrian took her hand, and Clara felt the last piece of her old life fall away. "Ready?" he whispered. "For what?" "Everything, the rest of our lives. Whatever comes next." Clara smiled. "I'm ready." And she was. Patasat. 5 years later, Clara stood in the gardens at Thornfield, watching Lily chase after 2 small children, her own, born one right after the other, healthy and loud and perfect. Adrian appeared beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "They're going to destroy those flower beds," he observed. "Probably. Mrs. Hartley will be furious." "Mrs. Hartley adores them. She'll pretend to be furious and then sneak them sweets when we're not looking." Clara laughed. It was true. The house that had been a tomb was alive now, full of noise and chaos and love. Lily had married a kind doctor and lived nearby. Catherine visited regularly, usually bringing some new scandal to discuss. Clara's mother and sister came for holidays, their relationship rebuilt slowly and carefully. Everything had changed. Everything. "Do you ever miss it?" Adrian asked. "The quiet life? The invisible one?" Clara thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, the safety. But no, I don't miss being that person. I don't miss watching life happen to everyone else while I stood in the shadows." "No regrets?" "None. You?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner." They stood together, watching their children play, watching Lily laugh, watching life unfold exactly the way it was supposed to. Clara had been invisible once, overlooked, dismissed, written off. But she'd made a choice. She'd stepped into the light. She'd fought for what mattered, and in doing so, she'd become something she'd never imagined possible. She'd become extraordinary. Not because anyone had given her permission, not because anyone had saved her, but because she'd saved herself. And that, Clara thought as Adrian kissed her temple and the children shrieked with laughter and the sun warmed her face, made all the difference.